All right, guys, welcome to Standing for Truth. And I'm excited because we've got a great debate for you guys tonight. I want to thank everybody in the audience for their patience, but I promise you it is going to be worth the wait. Today, we are debating the topic of, is there good evidence for the Christian God or God in general? And we've got Mark Reid as well as NephilimFree, who I am going to bring in just 1 second. I wanted to cover a few reminders, guys, because we've had a busy April already. We just finished our Genesis Flood Week event. I want to thank everybody for the support. The reception was phenomenal. So please share those around. If you have not yet checked out that event, please do so. Next week, we've got Dr. Dan Biddle with us on Wednesday, the 14th at 3 p.m. EST. So make sure you're here for that because we're going to have a nice Q&A with the audience. As well as next Saturday is the big debate between Joseph Hubbard and Taylor, who goes by Snake Was Right on YouTube. They are debating young Earth creation and Noah's flood. Also, at the end of the month, I just scheduled a couple more debates. On the 23rd, we've got a 2-verse-2 debate, NephilimFree and Jamie Russell taking on Praise I Am and Gavin. They are debating the topic of soul sleep. Also, the first week of May, we've got a bunch of shows, actually. I just put one into the upcoming live stream section. Dr. Ron Garrett will be debating Matt Slick on evidence for Christianity. So make sure you guys are staying up to date on the upcoming live stream section. And I noticed some super stickers and super chats were coming in already. So thank you so much. God bless everybody. Thank you so much for the support. Last thing I'll say is we just put out another Patreon video. We put out one a few days ago as well. So please check out the Patreon account for exclusive Standing for Truth material. So enough for me. You guys came here to see the debaters. So I am going to bring them in. We've got Mark Reid and NephilimFree. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for giving us your time for this important debate.
Thank you, Standing for Truth. I really appreciate you hosting this debate. And how are you, everybody?
My pleasure. My
pleasure. Well. Good to see you, Mark. And thanks to Standing for Truth. This will be fun.
And you, Nephilim. Good to see you.
I'm excited. We got two respectful, cordial gentlemen here. Both are no stranger to these topics. Now, Mark, it is your first time on this channel. So I want to thank you again.
Any channel, really. So, well, I've done sort of a discussion or two in the past, but never a debate. So, yeah, this is the first time I've jumped into the Shark Tank and decided in my infinite madness to choose NephilimFree to go up against. So, no, it should be fun. It should be fun.
Well, you leaped right into a den of sheep.
Okay. Not sure how safe that is, but sure. Okay.
Well, it should be fun. So that being said, Mark, you've been to, I guess, a lot of open mics and discussions, and this is then your first formal debate then, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm excited. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for agreeing to this debate. We love differing opinions here. We love debates and discussing these important issues. So, gentlemen, why don't we break the ice before we get into the opening statements? The format for the night, just for the audience sake, is going to be 10-minute opening statements, followed by, I think we agreed, a rebuttal of maybe 5 minutes uninterrupted, and then kind of a free-flowing dialogue after that. And some closing statements and an audience Q&A. So, guys, please make sure you're tagging me at Standing for Truth. But yeah, why don't we give a couple of brief introductions, break the ice. You know, what are you guys doing over at your channels, or what can people expect to find if they look you up, for example, on your channel, or if you've got a ministry? Why don't we start with Mark, since it's your first time here, Mark?
Certainly. Yeah, my name's Mark Reid. As said, I'm very new to debates and discussions. I don't really have anything on my channel. I'm not doing this for any kind of professional or YouTube or entertainment purpose. I really just find the whole God question to be very interesting. I find, religious people to be very interesting, and I want to share my perspective. For my background, I study networking and data transmission. Currently, I'm attempting my degree in that. But apart from that, I'm just your average internet denizen that's decided to put forward their point of view. And thank you all for welcoming me. Thank you.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thank you for that introduction, Mark. I'm definitely excited for this, and so is the audience. So Neph, you're no stranger to the audience. You've been on here many times for debates. I think you've been debating for 13 years now, Neph. So a brief introduction from yourself. Neph, good to have you here.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've been doing Christian apologetics for about, excuse me a second. Okay, doing Christian apologetics for about 14 years. I've got something wrong with my throat right now. I need to take a short break. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. You okay, Neph? Well, hopefully Neph's all right.
Well, let's hope and pray Neph is okay. Neph, take a short break. Have a drink of water if you have to.
Yeah, no rush, Neph.
We're here.
Take care of yourself, mate.
We're patient. We're patient. So take care of yourself, Neph. And I'm just going to go through the chat right now while Neph is gone, because we've got some super stickers that came in. Raymond, the super sticker master, thank you so much for the support, as well as Mitchell. Thank you, Mitchell. And I saw one all the way.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
I have a condition. There's a little muscular flap at the base of your throat that flips between your lungs and your stomach, right? It's a little triangular piece of muscle. And I was born with redundant tissue on that little flap. And every once in a while, it acts funny. It wants to close up and I can't breathe. And surgery would fix it, but that would cost, $10 or probably $15,000 or $25,000. And I've just never gone through that. It acts up every once in a while, gets irritated, and doesn't want to let me breathe. And it lasts for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no problem. If you want to break at any time, Neph, just ask, mate.
Well, I'm sipping hot coffee, and that usually eases the irritation. I should be okay in just a minute. I think I can go ahead. I've been doing Christian apologetics for about 14 years. Now it's been about 14 years. And I'm a Christian young earth creationist. And I'm looking forward to this debate. I'm glad Mark is such a cordial, friendly type of guy. Seems like a straight-up fella. And I'm really looking forward to our debate. So.
Well, I appreciate those introductory words. And Neph, if you ever need a break throughout the debate, or even if it gets to the point where you need to reschedule, your health comes first. That's the most important thing. So please let me know throughout the debate if you're having any issues. And we're here to help, and your health is priority. So if you're okay to continue on.
I think I'm going to be fine now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The irritation usually lasts a couple of minutes, and then it gets better, especially if I drink something hot that soothes it, I think I'm okay now. Thanks for being concerned. I'm all right.
No problem. No problem. Well, we've got the introductions out of the way. Once again, I want to thank you both for giving us your time. And looks like we are getting into the opening statements then of 10 minutes. And Neph, you being in the affirmative, we are going to hand it over to you. The floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to screen share something. Oops, I hope I screen shared the right thing. Let me see if I did. No, I didn't. Let me try that again. Okay. There we go. Okay, there's my screen share. If I could share that, please. Great. Okay.
You're good.
So
You're good.
Modern science has revealed, to the chagrin of those who are disbelievers, that the universe requires a supernatural cause. The laws of thermodynamics demonstrate to us that matter and energy can't be created or destroyed. They can be converted, but they can't be created or destroyed. Um, this implies special creation of the universe by a supernatural cause. Since if matter and energy cannot have created matter and energy, if nature can't be its own cause, then it has a cause outside of nature, and therefore supernatural by definition. This is an unfortunate fact that modern science has revealed to us. The universe did, in fact, have a supernatural cause. All things do have a cause. This is the basis of science. So an atheist or a disbeliever can't say the universe is uncaused and therefore eternal. Lots of problems with that. Matter and energy can't have existed eternally into the past. And here's some reasons why we know that's true. They had a finite beginning at a finite moment in the past. Every physical action constitutes an expenditure of energy or conversion of energy and matter. If matter and energy have existed infinitely into the past, an infinite number of physical actions or expenditures of energy would have taken place in the past. An infinite number of physical actions is impossible since they would have expended all usable energy. There exists a lot of usable energy in the universe, in fact, an outrageously enormous amount. Therefore, matter and energy cannot have existed infinitely into the past, but instead had a finite beginning from nothing. They came into being ex nihilo by creation. Since matter and energy cannot have created matter and energy, a supernatural cause is necessary. It's a simple fact. This is just, there's nowhere for the non believer to go. Modern science has revealed the universe had a supernatural cause, and that cause must have incredible intellect and power to have created a universe like this with us in it. The philosophy of mind demonstrates that we have a spirit, a mind which is not a product of our brain. Since our minds are not eternal, our spirit requires a cause, which is logically God. So there are many arguments I can make from the philosophy of mind. I could show you lots of arguments. I'm just going to center upon a couple. Humans do not have intellectual seizures when their brain is damaged or severely affected by surgery. They do not start thinking about politics or doing mathematics or contemplating concepts with an inability to stop. If our mind was a product of our brain, people should be having intellectual seizures when their brain is severely affected. Instead, seizures are limited to the physical activity of the body. For more information about this fact, see Dr. Michael Egner, award-winning neurosurgeon. So humans don't have intellectual seizures. If our mind was a product of brain, then we should have intellectual seizures as well as physiological ones, but we do not. If minds were merely physical chemistry of the brain, free will could not exist. If free will did not exist, every assertion made by an atheist would be a chemical reaction caused by a prior series of chemical reactions and couldn't be considered true or false. Therefore, it's impossible for an atheist to claim they're able to make any argument of any kind. Atheism is logically incoherent and self-refuting. The claim that our mind is a product of merely chemistry and we don't actually have an intellectual component that is not comprised of matter, i.e., a spirit, is demonstrably false. Because uh, if that were true, we would have no free will. And if we don't have free will, then any assertion made by an atheist can't be considered a fact. It's merely a product of chemical interactions, and there can't be any truth or falsity in such a thing. There's no right or wrong or truth or false about chemical reactions. They simply are what they are. You can't say a chemical reaction produces truth. You see what I mean? So minds are forward thinking. We consider the future and what should or shouldn't be done in the future regarding conditions and circumstances that don't even exist yet. But physical chemical activity happens only in the present because of present conditions. Therefore, the forward thinking of minds cannot be caused by the physical chemical activity of our brain. It's impossible for the present chemical activity in our brain to prepare future chemical activity for complex circumstances and conditions that don't even exist yet or may only exist in the future. So it's demonstrable by the philosophy of mind that humans have a intelligent, non-physical, sentient component, which exactly fits the biblical model for a spirit. So we are not just a mind. And if our spirit is not eternal, and we don't have memories which are eternal, we can't remember what happened 10,000 years ago or 20 billion years ago, then we had a cause. We didn't exist infinitely. If our spirit didn't exist infinitely, it requires a cause, which is logically God. So the philosophy of mind provides the understanding that we have a spirit. And semiotics is the employment of symbols in language. It is the application of meaning to and interpretation of meaning from a symbol, is symbolism. For example, the letters D, O, and G are not components of a dog. Placed together with these symbols have an applied meaning that is separate from and of a different category from the thing that is the letters, a dog. Similarly, the words evidence is not comprised of any physical thing, but represents a variable, which could be a number of things, which is of a different category from the letters themselves. The application of meaning to symbols and interpretation of meaning from symbols is a mental process, not a material chemical one. The physical chemistry of the brain cannot, therefore, be the origin or cause of semiotics, that is, the application of meaning to a symbol and interpretation of meaning from it. So what is in causing this is an immaterial component that we possess. And every time someone speaks, they employ symbolism, semiotics. And this refutes atheism because it demonstrates we have a spirit. If we have a spirit logically, or a spirit, if it's not eternal, it has a cause. The logical cause of our spirit is God. So whenever an atheist speaks, they employ symbolism, which couldn't exist if chemistry was all we are. Therefore, my opponents speak, whenever they speak or otherwise employ semiotics, they provide profound evidence that we have a spirit. Since our spirit is not eternal, its cause is logically God. The Bible demonstrates itself to be inspired, the Word of God. The fulfilled prophecies of the Bible go way beyond what is logically possible by guesswork. Fulfilled prophecy is an objective demonstration that Scripture has a supernatural source. This statement from Dr. Dan Olinger. Atheists, scholars, agnostic scholars, they simply have to argue that somebody fabricated the story to make them come true because that's how accurate they are. But that's not plausible. In Daniel chapter 11 alone, there are approximately 135 prophetic statements predicting the future in astounding detail, and every single one being fulfilled, historically confirmed. That's an amazing thing. The Bible proves itself to be the supernatural inspired Word of God. Life was designed. We have a creator. This is the bacterial flagellum. It actually has not only a motor with stators and everything, but it has a clutch. A mechanical clutch, just like the clutch in your F-150. It can be engaged or disengaged to cause the propeller to spin, the flagellum to spin or not spin, and move the organism or to not move it. An actual mechanical clutch. Now, if you want to believe that happenstance arrangement of matter can design such a fantastic machinery at the microscopic scale, submicroscopic scale, well, you're welcome to believe that. There's no logical reason to believe such a thing. Which, if you saw such a thing as this, would you believe that it was designed? You bet you would. These are numerous gears in an arrangement in a, I forgot what it's called, this type of arrangement of gears that all mesh with each other. But that's exactly what has been discovered biologically. Inside certain bacteria, is another kind of flagellum that has so many gears in it that they all operate in synchronicity, spinning around a single shaft. Not just a simple flagellum like this, but we've discovered they have flagellums like that. And that is what this is. It's the same thing. It's a series of gears that all operate together to make the machine operate stable at extreme high speeds. And that's part of our design. So we have a designer. Life is, in fact, designed. If you want to believe that we don't have a designer, well, you're welcome to believe it, but it's not rational. What you see on the screen now is one of numerous DNA repair mechanisms. Each one of these things, objects you see on the screen, represents a highly complex, I mean extremely complex package of proteins that operate as a unit, a mechanical unit. And they operate in synchronicity.
1 minute.
Okay. They operate in a specific order, numerous machine components to repair a broken message in the DNA molecule. Let me play that again. It is absolutely astonishing. They attach to the DNA molecule in specific orders. They find the error, they cut it out, they replace it with a newly manufactured bit of correct information, and then all things continue as normal. Each one of these components is necessary for each other component, or else all of them have no function and are worthless. Now, to believe that happenstance biological interactions, chemistry, just molecules bumping around, designed a series of molecular machine components that operate in specific order, each one necessary for the other to have any function, is irrational. It can't be done by natural selection, because if they don't already coexist together, none of them have a function, and natural selection would remove it. It would never exist. That concludes my opening statement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Neph. Just on time. And before we get into your opening, Mark, I just want to, a lot of super stickers flying in. There's a super sticker war going on in the live chat. So looks like Raymond is in the lead. I just wanted to thank everybody for the support. And also for the Q&A, please tag me at Standing for Truth, because once we're done the debate itself, we're going to be having a Q&A. So that being said, Mark, we're going to hand it over to you, and the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes. Did you need to share screen or anything, Mark?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. And thank you for hosting Standing for Truth. It's fantastic to be here. And thank you all for joining me. And of course, thank you to my esteemed opponent, NephilimFree, for being here. So firstly, I just want to run through the topic that we decided on. It was good evidence for God. Is there good evidence for God? I'm taking the negative position, of course. I don't think there is any good evidence for God at all. Now, the reason why I want to focus on this word good evidence for God is because there's always evidence for stuff, whether that be anecdotes or, you know, this guy down the pub told me. Anything could be considered evidence, anything at all. Really, we want to discuss whether there is good evidence for God, solid, demonstrable, reliable evidence for God. I must admit I have the way easier position in this debate. I have nothing to demonstrate. I don't have to demonstrate anything. The onus is completely upon NephilimFree to demonstrate there is good, solid, reliable, robust evidence for this God he claims to exist. Now, Nephilim did go into a bit of science and scientific stuff. I really think that sort of with scientific evidence, I wanted to draw away from that, to be generous to NephilimFree, because there is no scientific paper confirming God. There is no conclusion that any scientist has even attempted to make that says that God exists. So really, if you start to go into the realm of science, there is nothing to back up that God exists, because science is based upon scientific consensus, and there is no scientific consensus that there is a God. It just does not exist. So what really, I want to talk about what constitutes good evidence as far as a colloquial sort of everyday meaning, to be generous, like sort of, so what would you say? Oh, I have good evidence that, you know, my mate has a Ferrari or something. So I found a really good one a while ago from a Professor Colleen Sharon, and she gives an excellent rundown of sort of what we would evaluate evidence as being in sort of an everyday sense. She based it upon accuracy, validation by independent sources, errors, mistakes. I believe, as the esteemed Dr. Bart Ehrman said, that there could be upwards of 300,000 mistakes through the Bible and biblical accounts and biblical manuscripts. Now, to be fair, as Dr. Frank Turek would point out, that most of them can be corrected sort of by working through manuscripts, but there are ones that we don't know whether the correct interpretation from the manuscript is there at all. The next of Professor Sharon's criteria is precision, sort of how precise is the information being given. Now, the problem with the Bible is it's not precise at all, in the slightest. For instance, in 1 Kings, it's got a bowl where pi equals 3, and that's entirely expected from the people that wrote the Bible. They didn't have a working knowledge of the decimal system, but it just highlights how imprecise this thing is, that they put pi, the value of 3.14, etc., as just 3, which makes it absolutely imprecise as far as evidence goes. Representedness, now how well the information aligns with the origin of where it comes from, and this is one where you could argue that the Bible does represent a interpretation of the people that lived in the near Middle East at the time, and that's fine. But what it doesn't represent is the claim that it comes from a omniscient or maximally intelligent being. There is stuff in there that to today we know, for instance, like the pi equals 3. We know that is not right. That is 100% not right, and an omniscient being would know that. So it fails on that score as well. Now, the authority is the next criteria. Who is making the claim, and what authority do they take it from? Now, the problem here is, even though sort of historically we attribute the Bible to certain sources, all scholars agree that we cannot know for certain that these people did write it. So we've got absolutely no certainty that we are putting the Bible to the correct authority and what intention that authority had. Now, the last one is the clarity of expression. So the explanatory power of what you're saying, the reason you're giving, what does it explain? How does it explain what you're presenting? And unfortunately, the God explanation has zero explanatory power. You might as well say magic. It doesn't explain the process behind anything. Now, you might say, well, that's because God doesn't want you to know, but we're not evaluating what you want to know. What you're evaluating is what explanatory power it actually has, which unfortunately is zero. Now, religion fails on all fronts, and to my mind, it's just a story, and that's fine if you want to believe a story. You're very free to do so. That's your right. But what atheists like myself think is that you can't expect us to believe your story. And you can't make legislation and try to tell us how to live our lives based upon the story that you believe. We're glad that you like this story, but unfortunately, we don't believe it. So what I'd be very interested in is what criteria and methodology NephilimFree is using to evaluate this evidence. What methodology? How is he taking a ordered approach to evaluation, and whether, if applied to the other claims from other religions and other stories and other things, will it explain them as well? And that's part of him backing up the veracity of this story. The fact that he just really, really believes it is irrelevant to whether the story is true. The other problem with the evidence, good evidence for God, is that the more we investigate the underhand reality of our world, the less evidence we get. And I want to repeat that. The more we investigate, the less evidence we get, right? So lightning was once a demonstration of God's power. We know that's just not true. There's no God in there throwing lightning. It just is something we used to think and not anymore. Storms were once complete evidence of God. It is not anymore. Religious people once believed that spontaneous generation. Now, this one's a cracker. That basically God creates fleas from dust, and that maggots came from dead flesh and frogs from mud, that they just spontaneously generated into being. Now, it was actually the brilliant Louis Pasteur who disproved this by using a hermetically sealed glass vessel with bacteria. He proved that things weren't spontaneously generating from the hand of God, very, very famously. Now, this is showing that basically what we have here, as we investigate further, this so-called evidence just vanishes. It basically gets less and less and less and less. This is antithetical to what we should expect. And it turns out that it's not evidence at all for God, much less good evidence. So religion sort of has to occupy this shrinking and shrinking area of what we don't understand yet. And I want to emphasize yet, because every time this has been presented as, oh, God causes lightning, God spontaneously generates frogs, we've found out that that's not the case, and it's just a natural occurrence that we have perfectly good explanations for. This is the God of the gaps argument, and I want to really stress this. It's God of the gaps. It's an argument from ignorance. Now, I don't think that any person who's religious is ignorant. What it is that if we're ignorant of the reason why lightning occurs, you cannot just insert God as the reason. God needs its own evidence to provide that as a reason for anything. In summary, I honestly would not even take an aspirin on the evidence presented by religious people. I really have no idea why I would use it as a criteria to live my life. As you know, the evidence presented is certainly not sufficient. And if you have any doubts about the choices you should make, as far as evidence goes, how it should impact you, ask yourself really honestly, if you broke your leg, would you rather go to a hospital or be taken to a faith healer? Thank you. That's my time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, with 40 seconds to spare. So we will toss that
Beautiful.
40 seconds into the open discussion. Gentlemen, Neph and Mark, thanks so much for your opening statements, clear, concise. And we are now moving into the rebuttal rounds. So we're going to hand it over to Neph. Neph, you have 5 minutes. I'll put it on the clock. I will give you a 1-minute warning when you're at the 4-minute mark, and you've got 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttal. Go ahead, Neph, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Mark, you said no scientist has made an effort to show that God exists. I struggle with the fact that you actually said that. You should be aware by now that there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of scientists who are creationists who write blogs, articles, publish science papers, and do all manner of apologetics showing that God exists from philosophy and science. Now, in order to make your argument that this is I would say a false claim is true, you appeal to the scientific community by pointing out that creationists are shut out of the scientific community from publishing papers, and we're all well aware of the numerous examples of discrimination. But there are, you might need to be aware of this. There are over 300 papers published in mainstream science journals that are friendly to the idea of intelligent design. That might shock you, but it's true. They've actually been published. I can provide a list of them for you. So things are changing. It's not like it was in the 1980s anymore. Intelligent design has a foothold. You said there are 300 mistakes in the Bible. You call these words that we don't know the incorrect interpretation of. Well, that's just because the meaning of certain ancient Hebrew words has been lost to time. Doesn't mean it's a mistake in the Bible. It just means that we don't know the exact meaning of the word. For example, the word for bat. We don't know exactly what word that is used in the Bible that's been translated as bat. So the translators guessed that the Bible was referring to a bat. That doesn't mean it's a mistake in the Bible. You said the Bible was incorrect about pi. Where does the Bible say that it's attempting to reproduce pi? Well, it doesn't. You're assuming that the Bible is attempting to create pi because God gave instructions to the Hebrews to make the bowl of a certain height and a certain girth, and this must have been that the Creator intended to convey pi. That's just your assumption. God doesn't say that. And so that's, I think, a false argument. The Bible is correct every time it touches upon science. In fact, there's numerous examples of scientific foreknowledge that would be impossible for ancient men to know because the technology to make those discoveries didn't even exist yet. Particle physics, astronomy, and others in biology, even geology. Okay, you said we don't know with certainty who wrote the Bible. I would say it makes sense that we should interpret that certain men wrote the books of the Bible if they're centered around those men, or even if it was a secretary of those men or a close associate. It doesn't do anything to change the validity of the Bible. Even if we weren't certain exactly who wrote Jeremiah, doesn't mean Jeremiah is not correct information. If we found a text today written by somebody who has pertinent information in it, and they didn't put their name on it as I'm the author and my name is Joe, doesn't mean the information in that book or that paper is not true. So that's not actually an argument against anything. You say the more we investigate things, the less evidence we find for God. The opposite of the truth. The more we investigate, the more evidence we find for the existence of God. Modern biological science has revealed that life was designed. DNA is a package of information which is forward-thinking, information, algorithms, and linguistics. None of those things can be produced by anything but a mind. So we are, in fact, the product of a mind, and that's been revealed by modern biology. So your statement there is the opposite of the truth. You stated spontaneous generation. People no longer believe that frogs are created spontaneously by God. You should be aware of the fact that by the time people began writing about this matter of frogs falling from the sky and whatnot, it was in fact evolutionists who believed that flies evolved in a flask when there was rotting meat in it. The early evolutionists in the 1700s, they were the
45 seconds.
Okay. They were the ones who believed that spontaneous generation was a product of natural causes. So your argument that people believed that, frogs falling from the sky or that flies popped into being in a jar was a theistic thing. I would remind you that naturalists, that even God denialists, even I would call an atheist, believed that natural processes created those flies. So that's not a valid argument against anything either. I would say that the evidence that God exists is beyond overwhelming. People reject God for emotional reasons because they don't like his moral authority. It's not based on science, philosophy, or reasoning. It's based on emotional rejection of his moral authority. That concludes my rebuttal.
Thank you, Neff. With 1 second to spare. There we go. So great job to the both of you on keeping it on time. So why don't we hand it over then to Mark. Mark, you now have 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttal. Whenever you're ready, I can start the timer.
Okay, fantastic. So from the start of Neff's thing, and I'll try to be quick because he went through this very quick. The second law of thermodynamics is he's basically misrepresenting it. It's for closed systems, and the universe in general. When he says the universe must have a cause, or everything must have a cause, there's no evidence that cause is in any way God. He hasn't shown that. He's just asserted it, and it's just a story. Matter and energy in the past past the Big Bang doesn't exist. Time started at the Big Bang. So his entire thing about past and in the past the Big Bang, there's no past. There's no time. So what he is saying is absolutely nonsensical. If the past didn't exist, he can't reference the past. Without time, there is no causality. It's the most ridiculous thing I've heard. So matter and energy cannot create. Matter and energy change states. They don't get created and they don't get destroyed, but that in no way approaches that a God created this matter. So matter and energy can't create, special pleading, but God created something ex nihilo, out of nothing. That's a special pleading argument, an obvious logical fallacy. The mind is affected when the brain is affected. Well, damage to the brain causes changes in the mind. And I don't understand in what way you wouldn't understand this. If you damage somebody's brain, their mind changes, even their personality changes. That's like to say that the mind isn't changed when the brain is damaged seems completely ridiculous to everything we see in modern medicine. If you damage somebody's brain, you can, their mind changes. Forward thinking is a complete non sequitur. It's basically an argument from incredulity that, hey, if a brain is part of chemicals, then it can't forward think. Yeah, that's an empty, hollow claim that you have not demonstrated in the slightest, just a claim. And all of this sort of mind stuff is just a massive argument from incredulity. I can't believe that a physical brain could do this, so therefore it can't without my God. It's basically just inserting God into an argument from incredulity. The process... So what I want to ask too is, what's the process that God uses to cause this to happen? So where does God enter this mind structure? How does it occur? Unfortunately, Neph gives no indication to the process or mechanisms behind this stuff, just basically asserts it to be true. So with language evolves over the time. We start off with vocalizations like those in animals, like meerkats vocalizing that, hey, there is food, or hey, there is danger, It basically evolves into primitive languages and then into modern languages, or, advanced languages. There is no evidence that a God is required for this, or needs to be there, or has any impact on it at all. And if he is, what is the mechanism for him doing it? What is the process? Because that has not been explained. With the flagellum, when you have reality and you want to design something, you design it to be efficient. This works the same as evolution, which optimizes for efficiency. It's not designed. The argument for design is self-refuting, because if you have everything designed, from the rocks to the trees to everything at all designed, then what is natural? What is not designed? What are you contrasting it against? If everything is designed, then what changes something being designed over not designed? You have no reference point in the slightest. And all of this is an argument, again, from incredulity. I can't believe personally that it could happen, so therefore it cannot. And I think that was all that he went through. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mark. 50 seconds to spare. So once again, I appreciate it, gentlemen. That concludes the opening statements and the uninterrupted rebuttals. We've also got questions coming in, so thank you so much to the audience. Thank you for tagging me. That way I won't miss it. The chat typically gets pretty lively. So that being said, we are going to jump into an open discussion, but on this channel, as we always strive to do, we want to keep it cordial, respectful, free-flowing and organic, but at the same time, we want to keep it equally timed, and I will, of course, moderate as needed. That being said, Mark just ended with his rebuttal, so why don't we hand it over to Neph. Neph, you can start us off with this discussion portion if you had a couple points you wanted to make, followed by a question, however you would like to proceed. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I strongly disagree with everything you said, Mark. But you said I'm misrepresenting the second law of thermodynamics. I can't see how you can even think that. The second law of thermodynamics does state that matter and energy can't be created or destroyed, and yet they must have a cause.
Yeah, so I'll answer that. So basically, you're basically saying that we're saying that all of the universe was in some way created, right?
Of course.
Right. So if there was, say, a quantum state and then a change of state to our local universe, it's not that stuff has been created. It's simply a change of state, right?
Now, you said a minute ago
we don't know what happened before the Big Bang, but you're basically saying, oh, our position is that it was created, which is not necessarily the case.
Well, I think it is the case. Since matter and energy can't have created matter and energy, yet they exist. Now, you said
why couldn't it be a change of state from quantum state to a matter and energy?
I'm glad you asked that, because you said before the Big Bang there was no time. Since you acknowledged that time, space, energy, and matter were created at the Big Bang. Now, if you believe that, then when was there a quantum state, and when did it change?
Well,
you see the problem, don't you?
Well, time applied to quantum states is kind of problematic. But I'm not saying this is actually what happened, okay? I want to make that perfectly clear. We only know what happened 1 Planck unit after the Big Bang. Before that, sort of physics kind of breaks down, and we don't know what happened before that. So at the initial point of the Big Bang, we don't know what the cause was or the origin was for that event.
Well, the
I'm
problem
not
is
saying that I know what the cause or origin for that event is. What I am saying is, how do you rule out that it wasn't a change of state from quantum to energy and matter and there was no creation?
well, it's simple. Firstly,
Sure.
I would point out again that you refuted yourself when you said time was created at the Big Bang. There would be no time for any changing states. And if you say there's a changing state, you're alluding that there's some material existence, some physical realm that exists. Now, as I pointed out already, if matter, time, space continuum existed infinitely in the past, all usable energy would have been used up infinitely long ago, because matter and energy are continuously moving towards disorder. Entropy is a fact. Okay, so there can't have been an infinite number of prior material causes prior to the present, else there would be no usable energy. So,
Okay, so the word prior, if you don't
and
have time, then prior has no meaning whatsoever. Okay, you're basically saying that,
well, you're
okay, there
admitting your
can't be.
states don't exist then, and there was no change of
Well,
state.
well,
See, that's how
well,
you've
a
refuted
change of
yourself.
state could have happened just after the Big Bang. It doesn't necessitate a God in any way, and it doesn't necessitate what you're arguing for is literally something out of nothing, creation ex nihilo.
Absolutely,
Yep.
yeah, right. But if there was nothing prior to the Big Bang,
So why
then
is this
nothing
not special
causes
pleading?
nothing, right?
Why are you saying the second law of thermodynamics we cannot create or destroy, but special pleading, my God can?
I don't call it special pleading. I
It
think
is. I call it
the
special pleading.
inference is directly that a supernatural cause outside of time, energy, space, and matter is necessary.
You have
Now,
not
if there was,
demonstrated that in the
I, I,
slightest, that there
I
could be
think
any cause at all for this special pleading. It
I
is
think I've
special pleading.
explained that it's necessary
And I've
already.
explained
But
it's special pleading. It
well,
is special pleading.
no, it's the logical inference from the philosophy of science.
No, it's special pleading. You're saying that
Well, you're wrong
matter
about
cannot
that.
be created or destroyed, but
That's
there is a
true.
special case that includes God, that he can
No,
matter be created or destroyed?
let me explain what you're ignoring. Matter and energy can't be created or destroyed
Right.
by matter and energy. There's no proof that matter and energy can't be created by a supernatural cause.
There's no
And the
proof that it
logical
can
inference
either.
is that a supernatural cause is necessary. It's the logical inference. You said if there was a state of some kind that brought time, energy, space, and matter into existence, then the physical time space continue already exists. You see, if there's something, because nothing, when you agree that nothing is not causal, it can't.
I don't know. What do you mean by nothing?
Well, nothing that exists. If there is nothing,
Do you mean a
nothing can ever
philosophical
exist.
nothing, or what do you mean by nothing? I don't understand. What do you
But
mean?
if you don't understand, if nothing
Well, there's a
exists, what do you mean?
philosophical
What do you
no
mean by
thing, like
you don't know what
there's a
nothing means?
philosophical no thing, like I have no, what's something I don't have? I don't have a beach ball on my desk,
Well, we're
right?
talking
There's
about matter,
no
time,
thing.
energy,
No,
and
let me
space,
finish.
right?
This is no thing, like the philosophical idea of nothing, but that's different than sort of what a physicist would mean when they use the word nothing,
Oh,
like no matter and energy. So do you mean no matter and no energy and still
okay.
like a quantum vacuum, or do you mean literally the philosophical nothing? Because I don't think the philosophical nothing can actually exist. Like, how can
So,
you have no thing?
right. So you're pulling at Lawrence Krauss. You're saying nothing can actually be something, which is an absurd, juxtaposition of
Well,
facts.
that's how he uses nothing. I don't think nothing can exist. I think that by you referencing nothing, you're
Okay,
referring
great.
to something.
I'm glad you say nothing. It's not possible for you. Don't think nothing can exist. So
No,
what you're
I
doing,
don't think so. I
okay,
could be
well,
wrong, but I
then,
don't think
then
so.
what you're doing is you're saying that something existed, some material physical realm existed prior to the Big Bang, which brought time
Needn't be physical.
and matter into existence, which is self-contradictory. Because if time and physical was brought into existence, and there was already a physical manifestation of some kind prior to the Big Bang, then time already existed. So you've refuted yourself.
No, I haven't. It's a
Yeah,
quantum
clearly.
state needn't be a physical state. It's a cloud of quantum potentiality.
Can a material event take place outside of time?
Can a material event? I
Can a
don't know.
Can a cause precede its effect? No.
Can a
A
cause
always
precede its
a
effect?
cause is necessary for an
I don't
effect,
know.
right? You don't know.
I
Well,
don't
I'll
know.
just
Not
tell
to
you
my
that it
knowledge,
is.
but I don't know.
It is. You can't have an effect without a cause. So you've refuted yourself when you said time was brought into being by the Big Bang, and that's the logical
Sure.
inference. That's correct. But that implies, therefore, the universe came into being ex nihilo. Because if time didn't exist, there's no time, no series of events. You can't say there was a state and then it changed. There was a different one.
But
That
you're
can't
a
be true.
so
See,
you
so you
think that time
refuted
existed
yourself.
before the Big Bang? Is that what you're stating right now?
No, I
No.
don't believe
Then
it
how
did.
did it change state in your version
It
of
didn't
events?
change states. It was created ex nihilo.
It was
That's
created
part
ex
of the
nihilo.
evidence that it did. Wow.
So how was it created, which is an action in a place with no time?
Okay, so what you're asking now is for a physical mechanism for God's supernatural power, which is irrational.
What evidence do you have of God's supernatural power?
Miracles that take place, the fact that the Bible is
What evidence do you have of these
fact,
miracles?
let me
Where are
answer.
these miracles?
Let me answer. The fact that the Bible proves itself to be the inspired word of God because it has foreknowledge that couldn't be possessed by mere ancient men. Uh, personal testimony, the scientific inference we get of intelligent design in biological systems, which I'd say is beyond overwhelming. The genetic information material is a package of information that is linguistic and semiotic, algorithmic. Algorithms, linguistics, and information only come from an intelligence. They can't be produced by material causes.
Okay, so miracles are basically just the more we investigate them, the less they hold water. Miracles are absolutely one of the worst evidences you could possibly present. The Bible, for instance, there is stuff inserted into the Bible, as I pointed out, with all the mistakes and the criteria that I went through, that's basically said that the Bible is not good evidence. There's also the fact that there's passages in the Bible, like, for instance, in, I think it was Mark 16, if you remember the thing about holding snakes and being bitten, being immune to the poison, stuff like that, we know was inserted into the Bible because the earlier manuscripts did not have that in it. The church added it. So it sort of asks what else was inserted into it, as the Bart Ehrman says. We don't know. It's not good evidence. Personal testimony is some of the most unreliable evidence you are ever going to run across in your life. Personal testimony is worthless, absolutely worthless. Now, with genetic information, you cannot even point to a place where a paper has been written saying that God had any influence over genetic information. And I want to bring this up, actually, and this sort of ties in with something you said earlier. You claimed that I said scientists have made no effort to show God, and that is not what I said. That is a straw man of my position. What I said was there was no paper saying that God was responsible for this, and I made that very clear. And this whole thing about discrimination against religious people, no, there's discrimination against unscientific claims. It doesn't matter whether it's religion or you want to insert your own personal opinion. That's the discrimination, not that there's discrimination against religious people. It's the consensus that I referenced. And I didn't say, oh, no scientist has made any effort to show that God exists. No, plenty have made tons of effort. It's just none have managed to go past the scientific method.
Yeah, well, I disagree with everything you said. Firstly, about the Bible, there are plenty of things. There are a number of things actually in the Bible that don't exist in the earliest manuscripts, like Alexandrinus, Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, that people like Bart Ehrman's claim is evidence that people inserted them. But then we find that early church leaders who existed and wrote of these things in the first couple of centuries before, after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, actually quote these things. And therefore, they had to have existed. You can't quote what doesn't exist. So because it doesn't exist in certain manuscripts, because it doesn't exist. Let me finish my response. So since it doesn't exist in for let's say several centuries worth of manuscripts, doesn't mean it never existed. If somebody quotes it in 350 AD, they're quoting something. How do you quote which doesn't exist?
Okay, so fly,
hold on.
said Gandalf the Wizard.
Let me continue. You
There
said
you go.
there's no evidence that any scientific paper is friendly to the idea that God created anything. Well, what you see on the screen is just one of. Let me show you something. The following list of science papers, this list here, all of these papers are friendly to the idea of or state explicitly that an intelligent designer of supreme intelligence is what designed living systems.
Friendly to the idea of, you're going to have to define that a bit more clearly, to be honest with you. I think that's very, very, very sort of soft language.
Mark, please let me finish. Okay, these papers are published in mainstream science journals, not creation journals. Every one of them. There's 80 something, and they're all published in mainstream science journals.
And how many concluded that God exists? How many concluded that God exists? How many concluded that God exists?
Well, all of the authors believe that.
How many concluded that God exists?
Let me respond.
Just answer the question. How many concluded that God exists?
When you stop, I will answer.
Okay, go for it. How many?
All of them conclude that there is an intelligent designer is the likely explanation.
I don't believe you.
Okay, well, you should investigate. Okay.
Oh, I will, but I think that just because who wrote them were religious.
All of them state that the best explanation either imply it or state it explicitly that an intelligent designer is the
implication and stating something are not the same thing.
Mark, it demonstrates that intelligent design has a scientific foothold.
No, it doesn't. What it demonstrates is
this is not
read a whole bunch of
anymore,
papers
Mark.
And decided that they've implied what you believe.
No,
that's what they state. Taken exactly what you want from them, and then you're misrepresenting the conclusion.
No, I didn't come up with that.
None of those conclude that God exists because no scientific paper has concluded that God definitely exists.
Mark,
I think you are being incredibly dishonest. Not at all.
You're in denial.
Not at all. You know how I know?
Mark,
do you know how I know?
Respond.
I know because if there was a scientific paper that concluded definitively that God exists, it would be on the front page of every single news outlet in the world tomorrow.
No, so if you
that's how I know it doesn't exist.
So, Mark, one of your mistakes that you just made is I didn't compile that list. That list is compiled by intelligent design scientists who read the journals, have access to them, and accounts with the major journals of science, including Nature. And so,
if those did prove God, they would be on the front page of every paper in the world.
Okay, let's do this, gentlemen. Just to kind of get back on track, let's hand it to Neph. Neph, take as much time as you need, uninterrupted, to finish your points, and then we're going to give it back to Mark to do the same thing, and that way we can kind of go back into more of a discussion with less interruptions, I guess. So, Neph, go ahead, and then we'll throw it back to Mark.
Okay, so I know it really rubs raw people who are atheists that science is moving towards, becoming friendly to intelligent design. I know that really upsets you, and it's obvious that it does. You get so wired up that you won't, allow me to dialogue with you. But it's simply a fact. I didn't compile that list, so your statement that I cherry-picked ideas out of science papers and made a list is false. That list comes from the Discovery Institute, which is an intelligent design think tank of PhDs. I didn't produce that list. And those papers are all published in mainstream science journals, and they're all friendly to intelligent design. They state directly or imply that an intelligent designer of the supreme intelligence is what created biological systems. So your statement that I cherry-picked some papers and came up with some list is incorrect, and it wouldn't matter anyway. But because the facts are simply what they are. Biological discoveries have demonstrated life is designed. Now, Mark, you said also, I haven't demonstrated that minds are not physical. I absolutely have. And I'd be happy to discuss the philosophy of mind with you. You said forward thinking is a false argument. No, it's not a false argument, unless you can show that chemistry can set up complex situations which require consideration of future events and circumstances, conditions that don't yet even exist. Unless you can explain how the chemistry in a brain can do that, you've got nothing. And lastly, about miracles. You said miracles are worthless testimony. I'd say they're not. I'll tell you very briefly about just one miracle. Very briefly. My wife suffered for 6 years with diabetic neuropathy. It was mature. The tissue that coats her nerves was degenerated. The pain was 24 hours a day. It cannot be cured by medical science. The tissue that surrounds the nerve, like the coating on an electrical wire to prevent synapses from popping off into the muscle tissues and wherever, cannot regenerate in a human being with present medical technology. She was healed instantly of this pain by the laying on of hands and prayer instantaneously, never suffered neuropathy again, ever. And the only way for that neuropathy to stop, Mark, there's only one way. The tissue that coats the nerve has to spontaneously generate instantaneously for that to happen. It's the only way the neuropathy pain will end, because it's the absence of that tissue that causes the pain. The absence of that tissue. That tissue cannot regenerate in a human being. So how do you explain someone being cured of an incurable neurological disease instantaneously with the laying on of hands and prayer? If that's not testimony that a supernatural event took place, I don't know what is. So maybe you can explain to me how the neurological tissue instantaneously appeared like that in my wife's legs so that her neuropathy would end. Can you do that?
Okay, let me jump in here real quick, gentlemen. So that was about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Therefore, I'm going to hand it over to Mark. You now have equal time to respond and proceed however you'd like. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing is that you said, these papers are friendly to intelligent design. Friendly does not in any way mean that they conclude that there is a designer or is a god. It just doesn't happen. And plus, intelligent design doesn't necessarily mean God, right? You can always have aliens. How have you eliminated aliens from the equation, Neff?
I can't.
So that's, excuse me, this is my time. So I apologize for saying you cherry picked. I guess I should say someone cherry picked it. And, obviously a intelligent design think tank is going to find things that are friendly, as you say, to their intelligent design stance. So the philosophy of mind, this is just I didn't say it was a false argument. I said it was an argument from incredulity. There is a big difference. It doesn't necessarily make it false, but you haven't demonstrated it to be true. And the fact that it's a logical fallacy suggests that you are being irrational. That's what it suggests. And you don't explain, and you said I don't explain how chemistry does it. You don't explain how God does it either. You don't explain the process or the mechanisms that are used. So you have no explanatory power either. And plus, you're shifting the burden of proof. You're basically saying, oh, you've got to prove that my stance is wrong. No, you've got to prove that it is God, and you've got to provide some explanatory power with that. Now, with your wife, I'm sorry to hear about your wife, and I don't want to be mean because, obviously you care a lot about your wife, but that's just anecdotal evidence. That's just an anecdote. Misdiagnosis, all kinds of things can happen that cause this kind of stuff. Where is the scientific study on your wife to show that it's completely... there is no medical explanation whatsoever for it? Where is that? I want to read it.
Okay, so I don't need that. All I need is you can believe or disbelieve. Neuropathy, this is what you need to know, is that neuropathy, when it's mature and the pain is continuous 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I'll believe.
Let me say a sentence without interruption, please. This is a medical fact that when neuropathy is mature and the pain is 24 hours a day, it will not be cured. It can never be cured. That's a medical science. There are thousands upon thousands of physicians who published in medical journals to that very fact. Neuropathy is not curable. Okay, so the pain did end instantaneously with the laying on.
Okay, so if that's a medical fact, you need medical professionals and a medical study to back that up. You just saying that, hey, anecdotally, my wife had this thing and got better is not enough. It is not good evidence.
It's not good enough that my wife had neuropathy for a number of years and suffered with 24 hours.
Look, it's nothing to do with your wife. It's got nothing to do with your wife. That is an argument from emotion. It is anybody this happens to.
Do you think that I'm lying when I say my wife had neuropathy?
No, I don't. I think you're mistaken. I think you're mistaken.
Okay. She didn't have the neuropathy pain 24 hours a day?
I
for
don't
years?
know, but until you provide some sort
So
of medical
you won't
study
believe that she
instead of
did if I
just
tell you
a
so.
random anecdote from some random guy on the internet,
Oh.
I don't believe you.
So
Sorry.
you don't believe that I'm telling the truth when I say my wife suffered with 24-hour
you
a day
could
pain?
be mistaken. You could be mistaken.
How
So
is
why
my
is
wife
this
mistaken
every
if she
time
had
it's
24
black
hour
and
day
white
pain?
with
Let me just jump in real quick, guys. There's just a little bit of crosstalk between you guys. That's fine. You know, we all get passionate during these. Let's hand it to Mark to finish your sentences, your thoughts, your points.
Yeah, I just want to
finish. And then we'll hand it back to Neff for equal time. Go ahead, Mark.
So I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude to your wife, and I'm not saying that. But why is it every time with these things, it's I'm either lying or it is the absolute truth? There is another option. You could be mistaken. Something else could have happened. You know, I'm not saying you're lying about it. I just don't believe that happened without good evidence. I need good evidence, and you don't have it. You just don't. I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude to your wife, and I don't want to be rude to you, but until I see,
I know that.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it till I see the evidence. But keep in mind that I don't believe it didn't happen. Like I can't say, hey, I know 100% sure this didn't happen. No, I can't say that. But until you actually provide something, I just don't believe it. Sorry.
Okay. So you're saying I could have been mistaken.
Sure.
Well, first off, is that really rational to think that to dismiss this by believing that I could have been mistaken? What is it that I could have been mistaken about? Surely my wife was not mistaken that she suffered with 24-hour a day pain in her calves.
Well, you asked me a question. Can I answer? Can I answer the question,
also,
please?
What could
you
be
asked me a
mistaken?
question.
Well, here's the other part of it. The other part of it is, are the thousands of medical professionals who who've studied diabetes, spent billions of dollars doing so, and published countless papers in medical journals stating that that diabetic neuropathy cannot be cured because the tissue will not regenerate. Are they mistaken, Mark?
Okay, so
who's mistaken here?
Yeah, if you'd allow me to answer the question.
Yeah.
So when you say rational to make mistakes, have you ever been mistaken about anything, Neff?
Sure, I've been mistaken, but how could I be mistaken about this?
So it is possible that you're mistaken about things.
About this? How?
Well, anything. It is possible that you're mistaken.
It's a straw man. You're pointing to everything in the world and saying I could have been mistaken about this.
No, I'm mistaken about things as well. I'm mistaken about things as well, which is why I never say, hey, I'm definitely right about everything. You can be mistaken.
Tell me, how can I be mistaken?
Well, you asked how can I rationally say you can be mistaken. I can rationally say you could be mistaken because humans can be mistaken about things.
How can I be mistaken about it?
What do you mean? You want to explain to you what mistaken means?
No,
you think you're correct and you're not correct. I don't understand how I could explain that any easier.
I don't really sit here and talk to you. You know, it could be.
I understand you think you are not mistaken. I understand that.
Well, so how could I not be mistaken?
You could have been mistaken.
Your statement is true. You need
now
to
the other thing was misdiagnosis. Like, how could people that studied for so long and do all these things be possibly, make a misdiagnosis? Misdiagnoses happen all the time. They do happen. It does happen. And, people can write thousands of papers and be experts on cancer, for instance, and still misdiagnose cancer. It does happen.
Oh. So now you're claiming the entire scientific community, which you appeal to all the time, is mistaken when they say diabetic neuropathy is incurable.
Am I claiming the entire scientific community is mistaken? Is that what I'm doing, or is that a massive straw man?
Sounds to me like you're denying modern medical science in order to.
Am I claiming the entire scientific community is mistaken? Am I claiming that?
And you have not explained what I could be mistaken about.
I didn't say you were. I said you could be.
Okay, if I could be, if that's logical that I could be mistaken about it, you should tell us. You should have an idea of what it is that I could be mistaken about. You haven't clarified that. Since you can't clarify that, I can dismiss your claim that
I can clarify. It could have been a misdiagnosis, and you are mistaken.
It could be a misdiagnosis. Okay, so let me examine that second. You're saying that the neurologist who prescribed gabapentin to her because she suffered with 24-hour day pain, the doctor that she went to for checkups, the one that poked her in the feet with a needle and said, "Do you feel that?" And she says, "No." That doctor, that neurologist, he could be mistaken that she suffers.
I don't know.
neuropathy,
Why don't you
right?
get the scientific study and get back to me on it?
Well, I've already told you that the papers, the journals are chock full of science papers.
No,
that
on your
state
wife. This is an example of your
neuropathy
wife.
cannot be
There
cured.
should be a medical journal on the spontaneous curing of an incurable disease on your wife. If it's such
There
a
are medical
massive thing.
physicians who have made such testimonies in their own books, but I'm talking about neuropathy.
Where's the paper? Where's the medical journal? Where's the study on this that shows that it's definitely a miracle from God?
I haven't heard you explain how I could be mistaken about what. I just dismissed your argument.
Okay, let's do this. I'm going to jump in here real quick,
and
guys.
You're mistaken. I don't know how else I can explain being
You
mistaken to you.
can't
It's a
even tell me
fairly
what I
simple
could be
premise.
mistaken about.
That your wife
so on
had
this specific topic, gentlemen, let's
draw you a diagram.
I think a good idea. So Neph, let's do about a minute uninterrupted just on this topic, wrap up thoughts and points, and then hand it to Mark as well. And then if you guys want to then pick another direction to take, I know there were quite a few points brought up in the opening statements, and then that'll kind of get us back on track, and that'll also give us the opportunity to have you both give your final thoughts pertaining to that specific topic uninterrupted. So Neph, take 1 minute, and then we'll hand it to Mark to do the same, and we'll move on from there. Go ahead.
Okay, so all I'm hearing is a denial of medical science. You've said you doubt that neuropathy can be cured, even though the medical professionals are dead set on it. They published thousands of papers to that effect. Every neurologist, every physician on the earth, you could pick any family doctor from the country backwoods and ask him if neuropathy can be cured, and he will have read from other professionals. The answer is no. So,
look, the thing is that okay. Well, I'd like to address that. Thanks.
I haven't finished my minute. So you're in this. I find it common amongst atheists, God denialists, that they have to deny science, deny the philosophy of science. They deny the inference of design from the most astonishing, mind-bending, complex biological systems, and go on believing that molecules bumping into each other can design things like this, even though no chemist on the earth has ever observed matter move towards complexity, ever. We don't know of such a thing, and yet
10 seconds,
it's ordered to the highest degree, and you're going to believe that it's possible anyway. Your worldview is irrational, illogical, and unsupportable. Okay,
Mark, you now have a minute uninterrupted. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is just anecdotal evidence. It's just my whatever said. Now, I'm not. Look, you're welcome to believe that. Like, you can believe anything you want. That's fine. But what I'm basically saying is, don't expect others to believe you based upon your anecdotes, even if it is your wife. And it sounds like it's sort of veering towards an argument, appealing to emotion kind of thing. It's nothing personal. You can believe it if you want. I don't believe it because it's just an anecdote. It's just somebody saying it. Now, the whole thing about molecules bumping into each other, I mean, seriously, that is just a straw man in the greatest degree. Like, seriously, what person saying molecules bumping into each other? Seriously. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave that straw man alone. Now, I apologize for interrupting. I am getting a little bit passionate about this. Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, you can claim and make anecdotes all you want. Still not good evidence. If you had a study on this particular thing that said, hey, we've studied it and this is the only way it could turn out, and from the start to the finish of, hey, this person has this, then you might have something to stand on. But apart from that, it's just an anecdote, Neff. It's just an anecdote. Sorry.
It's more than that. It's you disbelieving that my wife actually had neuropathy, or disbelieving that the neurologist knows what he's doing, disbelieve the science journals that neuropathy can't be cured. You can't believe it because you can't believe that miracles happen. You ask, who believes that molecules bumping around into each other created all this complexity? Well, every evolutionist and every atheist does. What are you talking about? You dismissing your own camp now? Yeah, that's exactly what abiogenesis is.
Molecules interact with each other. They don't bump around as you describe it.
Well, that's what molecules do. Yeah, No, that's exactly what they believe. That's exactly what you're forced to believe when you deny intelligent design, is to believe that molecules running into each other, encountering each other in a primordial goo that rock soup organized itself into the most complex thing of astonishing microscopic machinery, interdependencies by outrageous levels.
And that's just an argument from incredulity.
No, it's an argument from chemistry.
That these things can evolve over time. And from your incredulity, you are inserting a God.
No,
That's all there is to it,
from
Nephilim.
chemistry, Mark.
It's an argument from incredulity.
No, sir. It's an argument from chemistry.
To how these things, there's no such thing as an argument from chemistry. Thanks.
That's what it is. Chemistry demonstrates it doesn't happen.
Things could happen naturally, and therefore you find license to insert your God.
No, nonsense. It's an argument from chemistry. Chemistry demonstrates matter does not move towards.
There is no such thing as an argument from chemistry, Neff. I
just gave you one. Yes. No chemist knows of any matter moving towards complexity, ordering itself into high complex things. No chemist on the earth. It doesn't happen, Mark. That's all. Matter doesn't move towards astonishing complexity. It moves towards disorder. Things break down, move apart. They get.
Cells and evolution kind of disprove you.
No,
right
evolution
there.
doesn't prove anything. It's scientifically impossible. You believe in something that's scientifically impossible.
So you don't believe
matter,
in evolution?
No, if matter can move, can organize itself into astonishing complexity, what chemist has ever demonstrated that, Mark? So how is your view scientific? How is it scientific?
All of evolution supports things getting more complex.
No, the philosophy of evolution.
It is being demonstrated. Is evolution part of the scientific consensus?
No, it's part of a philosophical consensus, not a scientific
Evolution is not part of the scientific consensus.
No, it's not science at all. It's philosophy.
All the virologists doing, vaccines and things based upon evolution, biological evolution. It does. Absolutely, it does. The whole idea that viruses mutate over time is part of evolution.
Okay. Let's discuss that. No, let me explain to you why it's not. Because, Mark, a virus changing its genetic signature to evade predation by chemicals.
Mutation, which is part of evolution.
Right. Yeah. That doesn't change the structural design of the organism in the slightest iota.
Yeah, but the virus may become more complex, right?
Let me explain.
The virus may become more complex, right?
Let me explain.
Okay, let me jump in real quick, guys. Actually, guys, this is good because now we're kind of moving into another topic. So this is good.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of got onto evolution. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that doesn't create.
No, it's okay. No. And I don't want to stop you guys from talking about that. So why don't we let Neff, especially for context-wise for the audience, we got a good chat. Neff, take 1 to 2 minutes uninterrupted, make your points, make your argument, and I guess formulate it into a question if you'd like to for Mark. Then we'll hand it back to Mark, who will also get between 1 and 2 minutes to respond uninterrupted. And that way you both feel like you're having enough time to make your point. So go ahead, Neff.
Sure. It doesn't make the organism more complex. It changes the complexity that's already there. It doesn't add anything new. The genetic information is already there. It's just been modified. Didn't add anything. Immunities don't cause evolutionary change. They don't change the structural design of the organism in the slightest way. Therefore, they don't participate in any process called evolution. They don't move it towards becoming some fundamentally different type of thing, which is exactly what evolution claims. We don't have evidence of that. So bacterial immunities, nylon digesting bacteria, they don't support evolution theory because they don't change the structural design of the bacteria. If the structural design of an organism never changes, there's no such thing as evolutionary theory. It's all philosophy. It's not science. What chemist has ever demonstrated that complexity arises naturally? None. They can show you snowflakes and a crystal. That's the same molecule bonding to itself in a pattern. That doesn't constitute molecular complexity. It's not. No chemist has ever demonstrated matter moves towards complexity. None. It's not science, Mark. It's philosophy. You might believe it, but it's contrary to what every chemist on this planet knows. So here we again see that the God denialist has to be in denial of modern science in order to hold to an antiquated 19th century myth. So now I would love for you, and when it comes to my wife's neuropathy, you have to doubt. What do you doubt? What can you say? You wouldn't even tell me what it is do you think I could be mistaken about. Could I be mistaken? Because the neurologist mistaken that his diagnosis was correct. Would his diagnosis just happen to match the fact that she complained to me and everyone around her that she had neuropathy pain 24 hours a day and used to sit on the edge of the bed, rub her feet, and pray and cry because she couldn't get the pain to stop for endlessly? And or is the entire scientific community incorrect when they state emphatically that diabetic neuropathy cannot be cured? No, you
10
doubt
seconds more.
all kinds of things. You doubt anything that you don't want to believe, even if it's well established in science journals. And I think that is just an example of how atheism is denial. It's not scientific or philosophically correct.
Okay. Thank you, Neff. Now we're going to hand it over to Mark. Mark, you have 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Of course, you don't have to take all of it, but you have up to 2 minutes and 10 seconds of uninterrupted time. Respond to whatever you'd like to. Go ahead.
Okay, so complexity already there. If you tell you that basically the structural design doesn't change, which is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Viruses evolve. Bacteria we've seen to speciate, become a different species. And from as much as you tout and basically made these wide sweepings of, oh, I follow science, evolution is one of the 2 pillars of science of medicine in science. There is germ theory and there is evolutionary theory. The fact that you think and tell me, oh, you doubt science, when you're basically one of the fundamental scientific principles of medicine, you're basically saying, oh, no, it's not true, even though the total scientific consensus, 99% of scientists believe in evolution. Like, seriously, the fact that you're saying I deny science is, quite frankly, hilarious, because evolution has been demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt. And without getting into the evolution debate, because we're talking about evidence for God. I mean, this is the dichotomy that you kind of make, or the false dichotomy. You think that, oh, if I disprove evolution, it automatically shows God. And it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. So all I have to do to show that it's a false dichotomy is show another third possibility that is not God and is not evolution. And I do. Aliens, magic rays, Charlie the unicorn, you name it. Any of those will show that your dichotomy, that if evolution is false, it must be God, is false. Absolutely false. And you say, oh, you doubt this and doubt that. No, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical. I don't just believe what people tell me. I'm sorry if you do, Neff. I really am. Because people will say all kinds of things. They can be mistaken about all kinds of things. You could be mistaken as to the cause of your wife's pain. Now, it's not because it's your wife or it's because you've got a religious explanation. It is just because there's no evidence that you're showing me besides you say so. And that's not enough. I'm sorry, Neff. It's not enough, because people are mistaken about all kinds of things. And the strength of your belief has no impact on whether it's true or not. You can really, 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 really believe it. You can believe it so much. Doesn't matter. Not good evidence. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's move this next response to a minute. So let's hand it back to Neff. Neff, you have a minute of uninterrupted time to respond to whatever you'd like to. Go ahead.
Okay, so all I'm hearing is, I doubt your wife had neuropathy pain. I doubt that neuropathy is incurable. I doubt, because you don't want to believe. I get that. But when you do that, you're denying the medical science. And you're essentially saying that a person can be, hey, I'm having all this pain 24 hours a day. And completely wrong about it. That they don't. My wife could have been mistaken that she suffered with pain 24 hours a day, caused her to sit on the edge of the bed, rub her feet and pray and cry. God, please take this pain away. My wife was completely mistaken. She was literally insane with a false belief that she was suffering with 24-hour-a-day pain, all to fit your atheism, to make it seem rational. See, I see what I see is an extreme case of denialism. And no, I'm sorry, but gaining an immunity changes the genetic information. It modifies the information that already exists, but it doesn't change the structural design of the organism. And if that didn't happen, bacteria didn't evolve into something non-bacterial, multicellular organisms, and multicellular organisms never evolved into many other things. If it doesn't change in its structural design, there's no evolution. You can't say other creatures begat different types of creatures and the whole evolutionary idea is true if structural design change doesn't occur.
Okay, thank you, Neff. So, Mark, you now have a minute and 25 seconds of uninterrupted time. Then what we'll do, because I think that puts it now at equal time for both of you. Then for the last few minutes of discussion, we'll put it back to kind of more free-flowing and organic without the timed responses, which keeps it kind of strict. So go ahead, Mark. You got a minute and 25 seconds, and then you guys just kind of go from there, free-flowing. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're really stacking claims here from Neff, because now he's saying you don't want to believe. So what that's basically saying is he knows what I think, and what my intentions are. So apart from all the other claims made today, which are amazingly vast and overblown, the claim that he knows what I'm thinking as well has to be added onto that. So there's another claim for you. So when you say mistaken, like you're mistaken that my wife was in pain, no, I'm saying that she was mistaken the cause of the pain. Like you've completely missed the point. Like, again, whatever event happened, it happened. Like, I'm not saying that it didn't exist or she's lying or, all of this other stuff that you seem to be insinuating. And I just want to, say that's a logical, you're appealing to emotion to make your point. And while I want to leave emotion out of it, this is why you're, saying your wife and crying on the bed and stuff. It's an appeal to emotion. It has no relevance on the subject at all. And so I'm saying she's maybe mistaken on the cause of the pain. Now, I'm not saying she is. I'm saying she may be, and that's why you need better investigation than, hey, this is what happened. Just a anecdote from the internet. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. I can claim all kinds of things. It doesn't make them true. Sorry. Now, with the structural design, we have observed speciation, which is evidence of evolution. The evidence of evolution is overwhelming. I mean, I don't really want to get into this debate because we'll get sidetracked onto the evolutionary debate, and I'm not a biologist. But, the scientific papers I could provide for evolution, that would be a mountain. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming, so I don't know where you're getting that from.
Okay, go ahead,
Thanks.
Neff. And if you guys would like to, you can keep it a little more free-flowing now. Just try and allow each other to, finish the sentences.
Yeah,
and you both are keeping this in. I want to say you both are doing a great job keeping it cordial and engaging. So this has definitely been a great debate. I just want you both to feel that it's been fair. So go ahead, Neff, and then you guys kind of go back and forth.
Well, if you call speciation, a butterfly with a different pattern on its wings, then we've observed it. If you call speciation the development of a fundamentally different type of organism that's never been observed, no scientific reason to believe it. In fact, every reason not to. I understand that you dismissed. You don't want to believe that there's something amiss in this tale, that my wife suffered with neuropathy and then instantaneously didn't. I get it. It's just profound. I'd say profound evidence of the grace of God. And you don't want to believe. So you've got to find something. Could the neurologist be wrong? Was she mistaken? There's something, but it can't have actually happened the way I say. It has to be a different story involved here, because then that would imply that a supernatural entity has done something marvelous. And you don't want to believe that. So here's what I find, Mark, in summary. I find atheism to be a denial of modern science, modern philosophy.
Okay, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but you're gish galloping. You've gone from speciation to
accept the moral authority of God.
Something else. You're gish galloping.
That's really
okay,
all.
let me jump in. Let me, Neff, if you could wrap up maybe your points.
Yeah, I'm not getting time to make a point.
I just wanted to make one statement that I see atheism
You've made three so far.
As a denial of the existence of God for an emotional reason, because you don't like the moral authority of God. It has nothing to do with science, philosophy, or what we really experience.
Okay, go ahead, Mark. And maybe guys, just for the last 10 minutes here, keep the responses limited so you guys can keep it on one topic at a time.
I want to nip this in the bud right here, because this is gish galloping. This is a speciation to his wife, to something else afterwards. It is gish galloping. I'm not getting a chance to address the points, and it's just going on and on and on and on and on. And I want to nip this in the bud because it's really important that I get a chance to address all the points. So with speciation, you're basically saying a change in spots on butterfly. That's not what we're talking about. We've got a clear fossil record, DNA evidence to suggest that animals have evolved to higher life forms. But as Standing for Truth said this isn't a debate about evolution, but the fact that the only point that I want to make is that you're saying that scientific consensus, I'm ignoring it, while ignoring the scientific consensus that says evolution is correct. A natural process. Now, the whole thing is you don't want to believe. Again, you're basically telling me what I think and what my intentions are, which is, incredibly, incredibly wrong. When you say it's profound to you. It's just profound to you. It's not profound to me because I've got no evidence to evaluate whether your claim is true or not. That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, and you're not providing me any evidence of your claims. I'm sorry. It's just reality. That's all I've got to say.
I think I am. Your statement that we have profound evidence of this whole evolution thing is from the fossils is completely false. The scientific community is quite on board with the fact that the fossils don't show clear evidence of evolutionary transition. This has been acknowledged.
I think most paleontologists would disagree with you.
Well, Stephen Jay Gould says every paleontologist agreed with him, and he said no. Stephen Jay Gould, the world's foremost paleontologist, died in the late 1990s, was considered the poster boy for paleontology, secular evolutionists. He was the world's foremost authority on paleontology. He stated explicitly that every paleontologist since Cuvier has known the fossil record does not show clear evidence of evolutionary transition. Now,
what about Archaeopteryx?
Archaeopteryx existed in Stephen Jay Gould's time. He died in 1998. Archaeopteryx was discovered years before. Okay, so I'm sorry.
The scientific consensus?
The consensus is that the scientific community has acknowledged in their own books that there is no clear evidence of evolutionary transition. And Stephen Jay Gould said every paleontologist since Cuvier has known it.
That's not right. The scientific consensus.
I'm just going to say you're wrong about that.
Evolution, along with DNA and other evidences that.
So Stephen Jay Gould was wrong too, right?
I don't know. I haven't studied Stephen Jay Gould.
Well, this is what he said. He said this: everybody knows the fossil record doesn't provide much evidence for gradualism. It's full of gaps and discontinuities. Most species don't change. They may get a little bumpier, a little bigger, and remain the same species.
You can quote
and he said this,
scientists.
and he said this: the fossil record doesn't show gradual change, and every paleontologist has known that since Cuvier. That's Stephen Jay Gould. Okay, so the world's foremost authority on the matter agrees with me, not with you.
No, the scientific consensus disagrees with you completely.
Stephen Jay Gould is wrong.
You've got nothing to bring to the table.
The scientific
consensus for evolution is absolutely
I don't care what they believe. I'm just pointing out the facts of paleontology.
No, the scientific consensus shows that evolution definitely.
No, they don't show any such thing. They believe it. They state they believe it, but they can't prove it. Well, if you want to debate evolution with me sometime, you can make that mistake. I'll be happy to debate that subject with you anytime.
I've made plenty of mistakes. I don't see why I shouldn't add another one to the list.
Okay, so I just don't see atheism as a rational, logical. It seems like a giant package of denials to me.
That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is evidence for God. Good evidence for God.
Well, I think it's great evidence for God that a woman who suffers with neuropathy instantly doesn't anymore by praying to Jesus Christ.
An anecdote. It's just an anecdote.
I know. You dismiss it. You'll dismiss every evidence for God, right?
If I said I had a unicorn out in the backyard, you'd dismiss it too.
That's boy, what a straw man that is. What a straw man that is.
An anecdote.
We don't have evidence that there's a unicorn in the backyard, but I have lots of evidence for God. The existence of organic life, for example, the existence of your non-physical mind.
From incredulity, it doesn't actually show God. How did God do it? What is the process or mechanism?
Well, that's a false question. And the reason is you're asking for a physical mechanism for a supernatural cause, and that's irrational to say that we should be able to show
evidence for the supernatural,
a physical manifestation of how God can manufacture it. That's just
don't you have evidence for the supernatural?
All kinds of it.
Yeah. Then why don't you use that to show a mechanism or process for doing it?
The words coming out of your mouth. Can you show me the physical mechanism by which chemistry can contemplate future circumstances that don't exist and therefore employ semiotics, which is the words coming out of your mouth?
No, but I'm not the one trying to demonstrate chemistry. How can you demonstrate God in that?
Excellent. Exactly. See, the point is
Yeah.
you're asking
So
a false
that's
question.
why I said at the start, the
false
onus is
requirement.
not on me. The onus is on you to demonstrate how God does that.
No, I don't have to demonstrate. It's a false
Yeah, sure you do.
requirement. No.
No,
I just have
specificity
to.
is part
No,
of
I just
having
have
good
to
evidence.
provide an inference that there is a cause that's supernatural, and I've done that every day for 14 years. I'm doing it now. When I point out the fact that you're employing semiotics when you speak, every word coming out of your mouth refutes your
and
worldview.
that's an argument for incredulity, basically.
No, it's not
saying
incredulous.
That, hey, that basically saying that that it cannot occur naturally and has to have some grand God to do it for us.
It can't.
Yeah,
happen
I mean,
naturally.
I know that you claim it can't, but you have no demonstration of that whatsoever.
Sure. I explained that. See, Mark, the explanation is this. No, I made an explanation. No, I explained it.
No, you claimed it.
I explained it, and I'll explain it again, Mark.
I claim it was a unicorn that
chemistry. No, I explained it, and you're dismissing that explanation. The explanation is this: that chemicals interactions only take place in the present. They don't take place in the future. They don't take place in the past. All chemical interaction is happening only in the present moment. Okay.
So that shows my magic unicorn did it.
No, what it demonstrates.
No,
is
it does.
Chemistry,
it shows my magic unicorn did it.
Mark,
no, that shows my magic unicorn.
Please, you want the explanation? It demonstrates that chemical interactions happening right now can't prescribe functions for outrageously complex entire sets by the millions of complex chemical interactions that should take place in the future under circumstances that don't yet exist.
Which shows
and that
my
is the
magic
forward thinking of the mind. It demonstrates that the mind is not made of chemicals.
And the mind couldn't possibly forward think without my magic unicorn.
No, it has nothing to do with the magic unicorn. God is not a magic unicorn.
Incredulous position on where that it cannot occur naturally, and therefore you are choosing your favorite explanation and inserting your favorite explanation into it. I could do the same with aliens. I could do the same with a magic unicorn. I could do the same with anything at all I chose. That is your claim. It is simply a claim.
It's false.
There is no evidence for it.
I'm just going to jump in right here, gentlemen. Great discussion. We're going on an hour and 40 minutes. It's been a great chat. We still got 50 in the chat with a ton of questions. So what I'd like to do for both of you is give you both a 5-minute concluding statement where you can wrap up your points or take this opportunity to address anything that you feel maybe left out on the table and you'd like to address. So why don't we, since Neph, you were in the affirmative and you started the debate with your opening statement, let's hand it over to you. You got 5 minutes, and then we'll hand it over to Mark for 5 minutes, and we'll get into some questions. So Neph, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. So this false atheist argument, we hear it all the time. You can't explain something, so you insert God. That's not it at all. That's a false argument. The truth is, we know that chemistry can't prescribe a massive number of necessary chemical interactions for circumstances that don't exist that only will or could exist in the future. That's not something chemistry can do. So it's not, I can't explain it, so I insert God. It's what we know. It's what we know. It's not what we don't know. See, this is a fake argument from atheists. You can't explain it, so you insert God. No, it's from what we do know. And what we do know is that life is designed. It's semiotic, it's linguistic, it's algorithmic, it's information, and it's information driven. Life was designed. That's the inference from the modern science. It's so conclusive, in fact, that there are now over 80 science papers published in the science journals that are friendly to or outright explicitly state that an intelligent designer is the reason biological life exists. We don't live in 1800s anymore. This is 2021. We don't hold to the philosophy, the false philosophy that matter bumping around created organic life, excuse me, and that organisms change in their structural design millions and upon millions of times, gaining complexity and new features which we don't see in the fossil record and we don't see occurring now. If evolution were true, there would be millions times millions of physical examples where organisms are developing features partially, incrementally in their body plans right now on this earth. And there isn't one. None. So it didn't happen in the past. It's not happening now. Never happened. So life is obviously created. Our minds are not physical. They require a non-physical component. Humans do have one. Atheism is a huge package of denials. Denial of modern science. We hear denial all the time. Denial that, well, you could have been mistaken. Maybe she didn't actually have neuropathy. Maybe the doctor was mistaken. The neurologists are wrong. Maybe all the science papers in the journals about neuropathy are, no, there's no such thing. No, no, no. Thumbs in the ears, hands over the eyes. No, no, no. Science hasn't demonstrated neuropathy is incurable, even though, only 25,000 medical physicians have published it. It is. No, it could still be. If something happened and it was fixed, that's not true. It can't be true. So it's just denial. Atheism is a denial. It's a rejection of God for emotional reasons because of God's moral authority. It has nothing to do with science or philosophy. Atheists attempt to use philosophy and science to support a fake worldview. That's all there is to it. And they can't. And I can demonstrate that. And I do demonstrate that all the time. This can't be true. That can't be true. That can't be true. That's what we hear coming out of the mouth of atheists about the existence of God constantly. And that's what we've heard from Mark is this can't be true. That can't be true. And the other can't be true. And Mark, love you, man. But that's what I'm hearing. Is this can't be true. That can't be true. Because you don't want to believe. And I can provide, all manner of evidences from the existence of the non-physical minds to the intelligent design that life was in fact created, personal testimony of medical miracles. I can show you doctors who published books where they say they have observed medical miracles occur. Tumors that existed in the brain of a patient, MRI done the next day, tumor's gone. What happened? It's gone. Never existed, huh? Well, the MRI made last week shows it, but this one shows none. Wow, how'd that happen? We don't know, but here's your papers, go home. You don't have a tumor anymore. This kind of thing has actually happened. But Mark would have to say it's never happened. And those medical physicians who have written such books, they're mistaken. The MRI was a quirk. Something happened, Battlestar Galactica or something. Somebody pressed the wrong button. Boom, it was a bad MRI. It was bad. The guys operating the MRI machine.
1 minute, Neff, 1 minute.
They were just complete buffoons. They couldn't get it right. And somehow the tumor disappeared because, well, it was a quirk in the electronics. Something. It just can't have happened. That's all. That's what atheism is. It can't have happened because God can't exist, because I don't want him to exist. There's no room for him in my heart. That's what atheism is. So creationist Christians like myself have an outrageous amount of evidence that their worldview is true. The philosophy of mind, the fact that life was in fact created, the origin of the Big Bang does require a supernatural event. Nothing can create nothing. If there wasn't anything, then in matter, space can't be eternal, because that would mean there would be no usable energy now. But there is. So the universe came into existence by a supernatural cause, by definition, a finite time ago. And it's just a fact. I can prove that the Bible is the inspired word of God because it has knowledge in it about things that are going to happen 3,500 years later or 2,500 years later, and man can't come up with that. Just can't. So I can support my worldview with an outrageous plethora of evidence, and atheists just can't do anything to counter it.
Okay, well, I appreciate those concluding words, Neff. That was 5 minutes and about 10 seconds. So to be fair, Mark, you have 5 minutes and 10 seconds. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Fantastic, thank you. So what we have from Neff here is simply stacking claims, and it's a common sort of problem that happens when you ask to provide evidence. You just get more and more and more claims. So this whole idea that is argument from incredulity, that matter cannot do this and cannot do that and cannot do the other. He hasn't demonstrated that. It's just an argument from he is incredulous that this could happen in a natural way. Therefore, he has to insert his God there. That's all it is. It doesn't mean necessarily that he's wrong, but I have no reason to believe it, and it's not good evidence. It just isn't. Now, it's ridiculous, sort of, he says, denial of modern science, and then goes on to deny evolution, which is one of the pillars of modern science. You might not believe it, and you can not believe it if you want, but it is a pillar of modern science, and you sort of tap dance around this thing that, oh, scientists don't believe it. Of course scientists believe it. And you know, I think if you were being honest, you'd have to acknowledge that a vast majority of scientists believe it, and it's scientific consensus. So if you want to talk about scientific basis, evolution is up there. It's one of the most tested scientific theories of all time. You know, and if you don't want to believe in evolution, that's entirely your choice. But you can't deny that it is scientific consensus. Now, the way that he sort of said, you know, oh, Mark just says this can't be true, which is a straw man fallacy. I didn't say it can't be true. I just have no reason to believe it. I'm not setting out to prove that this didn't happen or that didn't happen. I just don't see how you can prove it with the poor evidence that you're presenting. You know, with your example on tumors, tumors go into regression. They do, you know, occasionally it happens. Misdiagnosis happens. Other things happen. Unless you can examine these cases and go, okay, this is exactly what happened, then you don't have a reason to assign any cause to it. We don't know why a tumor may suddenly sort of go into remission and disappear. That is an argument from ignorance to say, well, we don't know, but then I'm going to put God in there for some reason. It is an argument from ignorance. And we don't say it can't have happened. We just say we've got no reason to believe it did, no good reason to believe it did. You know, and you yourself sitting there going, well, you know, Neph's saying, you know, we've got this outrageous amount of evidence. Okay, an outrageous amount of evidence is just a lot of poor evidence does not make good evidence. It just doesn't. You can have all the anecdotes in the world. It doesn't make it true. What does is having good, reliable, testable evidence to show that it is actually true. Even if evolution was disproved tomorrow, it could be disproved completely tomorrow. It gets you no closer to God. And Neph's sort of saying, oh, but it could be artificial. Sure, but it gets you no closer to God. It could be aliens. It could be magical creatures. It could be something else. Just disproving evolution does nothing to show God. And I don't think in any way that he's disproved evolution. And if Neph thinks he's disproved evolution, then he should write a paper and get it published, in my opinion, because he would be an instant celebrity all around the world and make, you know, absolute bank. Now, this thing about prophecies about, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 years later know what's going on. The thing about it is that not only were some of them very, you know, banal, just ordinary events that would happen every day naturally, they also, the people that wrote the conclusion of the prophecy knew what the previous one was. And as I said, the Bible is not reliable evidence for a God at all. Now, all of this amounts to a whole bunch of logical fallacies, stacking claims, including what I think, and just outright assertions that can easily be dismissed because that's all they are. You have to back up like a claim such as this miracle happened with something else other than just your anecdote, or else it's incredibly poor evidence for an outsider to believe what you're saying. And that's all we've got today is poor evidence. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. With 20 seconds to spare. So thank you to both Mark and Neph for an awesome debate, incredibly engaging. And I can't believe we're going on 2 hours. So time has flown by. You guys both have incredible endurance. So good job to the both of you. And also great job to the chat for keeping the live chat fun tonight. We've got almost 60 people in the chat still with lots of questions and a ton of super stickers. So guys, thanks so much for all your super stickers. And I apologize if we don't get to everybody's questions, because realistically, with how many questions I've got saved here, we would be here for probably about 10 hours. And Mark and Neph, that would be a long debate for you guys. So we'll keep it about 20 minutes. I'll put on the timer about 20 minutes for the Q&A. Once the timer goes off, then we'll know that we need to start winding it down. A few questions came in all the same. Is there an after show? I know a couple super chats came in. Same thing. Is there an after show? So it looks like people enjoyed this so much that they want to give their own thoughts. So are you guys aware of any after show? Neff, are you having an after show?
Yeah, I guess I'll have one. Sounds like a fun time to do one tonight. I guess so. I'll have one, and Mark's welcome to come to it if he'd like to.
No, I got things to do. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but yeah, I'd love to, but
Or perhaps
yeah,
another time.
yeah, no worries.
Okay, well, that answers a bunch of questions there. So after show on Neff's channel. So I appreciate it. Let's start with, let me see here. So we've got some $50 super chats here from Alyosha. I appreciate all the support, guys. It really is a blessing. So God bless you. And thanks so much for your support. So this first super chat is for Mark. So Mark, the question is, and I'll just read it word for word. Would Mark refute Bart Ehrman's position that Christ existed / was crucified and the Paul corresponded authentically in the majority of the letters attributed to him with people who knew him and believed he was resurrected?
Okay, so I'm not a mythicist. I don't take the mythicist position. Yeah, I would not refute Bart Ehrman that Christ was an actual person, and he could well have been crucified or was crucified. So I wouldn't attempt to refute Bart Ehrman on that point. But that unfortunately gets you no closer to God. Christ could have been a real person. He could have been crucified. The separate claim that he was a god requires its own evidence for it. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
No problem. Let me see. Could Mark refute Bart Ehrman's position that Christ existed and the Paul corresponded with people? So, and that Paul corresponded with people,
Paul.
yeah. Who knew him and believed he was like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Paul could have, certainly corresponded authentically with people. That's not a problem. The supernatural claims are something that need their own evidence to prove. So, Paul could have been completely authentic about the way that he communicated. It isn't actually evidence for his claims.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate Raymond who put in a super sticker. So thank you so much. Let's move right on to the next one. This is a $50 super chat from George Bond. Not a question, but he says, I'm donating my Chinese dinner for tonight to provide food for SFT's kids. So very sweet of you, George. As I always say, George is putting my kids through college and putting food on their table. So I appreciate the support. $2 super chat from Raymond. Neff after show ? So yes, Neff is having an after show. And another $50 super chat from Alyosha. So once again, guys, no words for how much I appreciate the amazing support. So this one is also for you, Mark. Mark, a lot of questions are for you. So I just want to say thanks for being a good sport. Awesome. I appreciate it. And the question is, could Mark identify 3 examples of information addition in terms of evolution?
Information addition?
Maybe information adding mutations. It must refer to the portion you guys were going back and forth on pertaining to evolution.
Well, I'm not a biologist or a sort of evolutionary biologist. I do notice that NephilimFree's got a 5-fingered hand, and I could point to the De Silva family in Brazil, who's a fascinating example of human evolution, where they've each got 6 fingers on each hand, completely functional, completely working. They play basketball really, really well. And that's something that is added to the human hand. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for. As I said, this isn't a debate about evolution. It's a debate about evidence for God.
Well, I appreciate that, response and answer there, Mark. Neph, if you would like to respond as well. And then, as always, whoever the question was for, we will give them the last word.
Sure. I'd say a duplicate of, that causes an extra finger on the hand is not a positive thing for those people. And it's not an example of evolution. It's a duplication of an existing feature. Evolution requires the continuous creation of new features. So pointing to a genetic mistake which causes a duplication, which is negative, by the way, it doesn't support the evolution theory. Evolution claims to create new stuff. And that's not an example of it.
It's actually positive. They play basketball really well, and there's no lack of functionality in any of their any of the 6 fingers on any of their hands. And
there is
Okay, Mark.
No, there isn't. I mean,
yeah, there is.
I've look at it. Oh, what? How is it? How is it bad? It's just a mutation. How is it bad?
The fingers on the hand are not able to interact with each other in the most intricate way like they do when they have only 5.
Yeah, they can. They're fully functional. I'm not sure if you heard that, but they're fully functional.
Okay, you're welcome to believe it.
Yeah, it's the silver family. Look it up. The silver family. It's fascinating. It's a mutation that's occurred.
Hands too, so they're not the only ones.
Okay, guys, thanks for keeping it fun. And so we've got 2 super chats here from, where is it? Patriot University PhD. So, and one of the super chats contains a question for Neph. So we're going to get you in on this, Neph. First super chat, $20 super chat. I appreciate the support. SFT, please take my money. I appreciate it. And the super chat that has a question attached to it is, Neph, why it more important to figure out, and I'm just reading these word for word, more important to figure out the Earth's age and the universe than proclaiming Jesus's message and what we need to do for our salvation. The 6-day mythology seems irrelevant. What are your thoughts, Neph? He's coming at you.
Okay. So the 6-day mythology, it's an absurd statement. The scripture is clear about 6 literal days. Even Exodus verifies that. 6 days you will work and do all your work and rest on the 6 days. For in 6 days God created the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that in them is. So the Bible is clear about it being 6 days. And as for isn't it more important to share the gospel message? Well, ultimately it is, but that's not what this event is about. It's not about sharing the gospel message. It's about showing that atheism is logically incoherent and a refusal to believe.
Okay, well, I appreciate that answer there, Neph. I appreciate the support and the super chats. Mark, of course, if you'd like to respond to that, go ahead.
Yeah, of course, my position is going to be, I think it's important to find out the age of the universe, and the Bible is just a story. It doesn't align with what we know about the formation of the solar system, accretion disks, and whatnot. It just doesn't. In the Bible, there's light before the sun and things like that, and it's just a story from my position anyway.
Thanks for that response, Mark. And the question was for you, Neph, so therefore you get the last word. Go ahead.
Okay, so planets, there is no accretion disk. Nebular hypothesis has failed. Mainstream scientists have published that experiments attempting to demonstrate that matter will accrete in space have failed. Matter won't do it. It's not sticky. Space dust doesn't accrete. Particles in space bounce into each other and shatter each other, or they go flying off in different directions, but they don't stick. And so there's no scientific support for the idea of planets forming from space gas. It doesn't happen. It's a myth. There is a tremendous amount of scientific evidence that the Earth is young. The decay rate of its magnetic field, the geologic column, demonstrates the flood of Noah. There's no millions of years in the geologic column. It was all produced by a catastrophic flood that buried billions of creatures in sedimentary strata laid down by moving water. There's lots of evidence that the Earth is in fact young. It's a myth that came to be believed by God denialists in the late 1700s that the Earth is a vast age. That's the myth. The myth is imaginary millions of years exist in the past. That's the myth. The world has never believed that up till then, and people who have authority to push views over on other people have wormed this into the education system.
If you want to start wrapping it up, Neff, I apologize.
Yeah, to indoctrinate. I'm done.
Okay, I appreciate that from both of you, and I know that topic could spark another entire 2-hour debate. So I guess before we get too much down that road, why don't we go with this super chat from Raymond, the super sticker, super chat master, $2 super chat, something a little more lighthearted. Favorite pie slice? Question mark. What are your favorite pie slices, gentlemen?
I'd probably have to say chocolate Bavarian. Does that count as a pie?
I think it sounds pretty good to me.
I like the chocolate stuff, so I'm gonna call chocolate Bavarian a pie and go with that. All right,
beautiful.
That
would go good with my coffee.
My favorite would be hot cherry pie with ice cold milk. I love it when you bite into one of those cherries and they burst in your mouth with all that warm cherry juice exploding. It's absolutely fantastic with an ice cold glass of milk.
You're making me hungry now.
Yeah, I think making me hungry too.
I'm going to need a piece of pie after this debate. I'm definitely more of a pie guy than cake. So great question. Actually, that was probably the toughest question of the night because there's so many good pies and desserts to choose from. So I appreciate that. And let's see here. Next question. Here's a super chat from Patriot University, PhD. $2 super chat. I appreciate the support. Standing for truth for president. So I appreciate that. Not sure how many people would vote for me, especially because I'm Canadian. So maybe I'll run for prime minister one day. Let's see here. Next question is from, this is another super chat from Mitchell. $5 super chat. This came in all the way back near the beginning. So I think it's referring to something you might have said, Mark. Mitchell, $5 super chat. Thanks so much for the support. And Mark, question is, can you create a single component for the flagellum motor? If not, would you conclude that intelligence created it without relying on consensus? Go ahead, Mark.
So can I create a component for a flagellum motor? No, because a flagellum motor is something that replicates. It's organic, it's biological. Now, when you have outcomes that you wish to make, for instance, like you're trying to provide an efficient way to move something, it's not that uncommon for something biological to seem like it is something that we've engineered, because A, we're after the same outcome, and B, we're looking for the most efficient way to do that. There are motors that don't resemble anything in biological organism whatsoever, but no biologist on the planet would call a flagellum motor mechanical. It is biological and it does replicate, which means that it is not like a human motor. So no, I can't create a component because it's self-replicating. And would you concede that intelligence did that? Absolutely not. And I wouldn't rely on consensus to do it either.
Okay, well, I appreciate the question and I appreciate the answer, Mark. Let's hand it over to Neff. If you did have a response, go ahead. And then, as always, Mark will get the last word since it's his question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say mainstream scientists by the bajillions acknowledge that the flagellum is in fact mechanical. They're the ones who publish these papers and show these illustrations, 3D illustrations that I provided. In fact, they came from the mainstream scientific community, and they even pointed out the thing has a mechanical clutch, which I showed an image of. So Mark is wrong about that.
And Mark, you get the last word.
Yeah, so I just want to point out the lack of precision where you're talking about scientists in their bajillions, I think it was. Yeah, I think that's a little bit of an over-exaggeration. But what they say is it's mechanical-like and it's clutch-like. They don't say it's an actual clutch. It acts as a clutch. It is like a clutch. So when we're talking about things like something that moves is called a motor. What you've got to do is demonstrate that this motor has in fact been designed, which none of the scientists in their bajillions are saying.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Mark. And I'm just looking through all these crazy amount of questions just to pick a couple more before I think we call it a night. I want to thank you both. You guys have been awesome and both doing a great job answering these questions. So let's see here. Okay, here's a super chat from Don K, $5 super chat. I appreciate it, Don. Not a question, just says truth and its foundation is all that matters. So I appreciate the support. And here's another super chat that just came in from, trying to find it on the screen. Maybe I can pull it up. Here we go. Alec Cox. So it looks like we had somebody coming at you, Neff, earlier, and Alec is coming at you now, Mark. Super chat is the question: do you exist at Mark Reid? Prove that you are not a CGI bot.
Cognito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Now I can prove it to myself. How do I prove it to you? That's an interesting question. So that comes down to something called hard solipsism. How do we actually demonstrate that the reality around us is actually in fact real? It's the old, everybody's seen it. It's, are you a thing in the Matrix or something along those lines? No one has ever come up with a good answer that demonstrates that. So I can prove to myself that I exist using I think, therefore I am. I can prove that there is a ultimate or absolute reality by saying if you have thoughts, then something must exist to produce those thoughts. If if something exists, then something exists in reality, and therefore reality exists. I can prove that. But how would I prove to you beyond any level of doubt that I exist? I can't.
Okay, I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate that answer, Mark. Let's jump right to the next one then. We've got let's see here. Question from Praise I Am. Question for Mark. The question is, Mark, is empiricism your standard for epistemology? If so, do you realize that's inherently begging the question?
Do I think that empiricism is the standard for my epistemology? No, I think it's my standard for ontology, though, perhaps. Like if you have an ontological question, whether something exists or does not exist, I think that empiricism would be my standard for that. To be honest with you, I don't know why empiricism wouldn't be your standard for an ontological question. But, I mean, you sound like you're making a category error, because epistemology is why you believe something. It's the study of the justifications behind your belief. If you're talking about evidence, then that falls into an ontological category. It falls into does something in fact exist? And as I said throughout the debate, sort of with epistemology, you're free to believe whatever you want to believe. What we're talking about is the actual existence of something, the metaphysics of it.
All right, I appreciate that, Mark. I appreciate the question, Praise. And Neff, did you have a response at all? If not, we can move to the next question, Neff. It's up to you.
I would just point out that Mark said he can prove it to himself, but he can't prove it to you. And by his own standard, that would be anecdotal, which he applies to everything that I say. Oh, that's just an anecdote. Well, he stick by his own. I think he's dismissing himself. And so that's all.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Neff. And Mark, the question was originally for you. So if you'd like a quick last word, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm not demonstrating in any way that I exist. It's up to you to decide based on the evidence that you have. And plus, what we have when we're talking about sort of, how can you prove this is levels of confidence. If you don't want to believe in your own senses, I've got no control over that. If you don't want to believe in logic or whatever, I've got no control over that. You can not believe if you want. I've got no control over that.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, I only got time for another couple questions in the audience, so I really apologize if I couldn't get to your question. But there's been a lot of questions, which is a good thing because it's been a very lively chat. It's been a great debate, definitely one to remember, guys. So thanks for making it one to remember, Mark and Neff. This question is from Health First and Feelings Second. I appreciate the question. Question is for Mark. How do you account for the existence of human consciousness in your worldview?
I don't know why consciousness exists, and I don't know of any scientific papers saying why consciousness exists. If you were to insert God, as Neff does in there, that is an argument from ignorance. Just because we cannot answer that question doesn't mean that the answer is automatically God. And that's basically it. It's a logical fallacy. Argument from ignorance, I'm afraid. God of the gaps.
And Neff, if you wanted a quick response.
Yeah, it's not about what we don't know. It's the atheist fake argument. It's about what we do know. And what we do know is that mind is not comprised of chemistry. It's not a physical material thing. Mind's producing material things. It's irrational to believe that material processes produce that which does not exist physically. Immaterial constructs of mind, or consideration of future events, which chemistry has no participation in. So we can demonstrate empirically that minds are not created by matter. And so Mark is wrong about that too.
And Mark, if I remember correctly, like most of the questions, that one was for you. So you can have the last word if you'd like to.
Yeah. So that's just an argument from ignorance. It's a logical fallacy. Just because we don't know where the mind comes from it does not give any license to insert a God is behind anything at all. It's sort of a nonsensical thing that we don't know the cause, therefore it must be God. Because if you don't know the cause, then you don't get to just insert God into that, I'm afraid. Argument from ignorance. God of the gaps again.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. And we got one last super chat. So I want to make sure I get to all the super chats, guys. Thanks so much for all the support tonight. I really, really appreciate it. You guys are the reason why we can put out so much content and pretty well do this full time. So God bless you. This super chat comes in from George Bond. This was way, way at the beginning, Mark. I think this might be referring to something in your opening, but okay. The super chat, $5 super chat. Thank you so much, George. Question for Mark. The MO1 bacteria has 7 interconnecting synchro gears. Man designed a similar gearing system. Why is that comparison an argument from ignorance? Go ahead.
So, as I said before, when you're aiming to do something, especially in engineering, you're aiming for the same thing that naturally occurs through evolution. Evolution can explain why a system will be evolved that is similar to somebody engineering something. Because you're after the same purpose, you're after to move something or to change something or to enable something to work, and you're after the most efficient way possible, certain, let's say, blueprints or things that come up will be similar about 2 different things. That does not mean that it has to have been designed. So yeah, basically that's it. It's like sort of simultaneous evolution or similar evolution, similar mechanisms or similar designs and blueprints and mechanisms and natural things come up because the purpose is the same and efficiency is what it's aiming for.
Well, thanks for that super chat and thanks for that answer, Mark. Neff, you can have a quick response if you'd like to.
Well, what we keep hearing is that It's an argument from ignorance because of what we don't know. But I keep pointing out that it's because of what we do know. And so Mark is stuck in this loop, this fake argument that belief in God or in intelligent design is based on ignorance because we don't know. We insert God there. And that's not it at all. It's because of what we do know. And this is why I demonstrate that atheism is a giant package of denials of a tremendous number of things that have been learned by man, modern scientific and philosophical knowledge. They have to deny these things and claim you just insert God, denying the fact that what we're actually pointing out is that modern science has demonstrated the existence of a supernatural being which has caused all things to exist. It's not about inserting God. It's about the actual modern science, and we have examples of it, like Mark saying, it looks like a clutch, it operates as a clutch, but it's not really a clutch. This is the kind of argument that people like Mark have to hold to in order to deny that it's really a clutch.
Thank you for that response, Neff. And Mark, question was for you. Go ahead. Last word.
Okay, so this isn't a fake argument. It's a very real argument. And Neff's actually completely mistaken and gone off the deep end, because I never said that the biological thing was an argument from ignorance. I said that was an argument from incredulity, which is completely different. An argument from incredulity is saying, I don't believe that nature could have produced this by itself, so therefore I'm going to insert God. So you've completely missed the point entirely, Neff. Again. And as for the clutch, like you're sort of saying, oh, what's a clutch? It's comparing it to a car or another mechanical device kind of thing. And it is different, because a car doesn't self-replicate. A clutch doesn't get replicated in that. It is biological and not a human-made mechanical thing or a mechanical thing at all. It's biological. And that's where you're completely missing the point. When's the last time you have seen a car replicate into another car? It doesn't happen because it's not biological.
Well, I appreciate that response. And guys, I want to thank you both for keeping this Q&A a lot of fun. And also I want to thank the audience for a lot of awesome questions. We're going to start winding it down here, guys. You've both done a great job, and we're going on 2.5 hours. So I appreciate both of your endurance, Mark and Neff. Great debate. So question here, Alpha Beta. Question for Mark. What would convince you that a God might exist?
Oh, that's a good question. It's hard to know until, just say I am convinced in the future, until what I determine is convinced. I think a long way to demonstrating it would be to have some sort of scientific study that is absolutely demonstrable for that this being actually exists in reality. But in order to be a scientific study, the problem comes that a scientific study must be testable, and a lot of the claims is, well, God isn't testable. So I don't know how you would test the untestable, but that's kind of what I'd need. And sort of a claim that it cannot be tested or cannot be demonstrated, like for instance a God of divine hiddenness, that's not my problem. My problem is that a lot of claims have been made about gods and spirits and ghosts and demons and just all kinds of things, and none of them have ever been demonstrated to my mind. So that's what would be good evidence to convince me, but until I actually get what convinces me, I really don't know for sure.
I apologize. I was on mute. Thanks for the response. And you're right. That was a great question. Great questions all around tonight, guys. So you guys are doing a great job in the chat. And Neff, if you would like a response to that as well, go ahead.
You're on mute, Neff.
Oh, Neff, I think you're on mute. My apologies. You're all on mute, you. Okay, Neff, you're good.
Oh, okay. I would just point out that, according to Mark, if it's biological, it can't be a clutch. If it's in an automobile, yeah, it could be a clutch. But if it's biological, that can't be a clutch. This is the kind of denialism that we get from. This is why I say the atheists are in denial of a tremendous amount of the crude scientific and philosophical knowledge of mankind. It's a clutch, but it can't be because it's biological, and we claim evolution is true. Therefore, it's not a clutch if it's biological, and because that would imply design. So it can't be a clutch. See how that fixes that?
Yeah, I think you're answering the wrong question, Neff.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We've had a ton of questions come through, so no worries. The question was, well, I've lost it. I've got a ton of questions here. I think it was, Mark, what would convince you that God might exist was the question. And that being said, why don't we move? Okay, we're going to end it with this one. So let's see.
Well, maybe Neff could tell me what should convince me. What he thinks should convince me.
That's a great question, Mark. The answer to that is everything. Every single thing. The world around you that you walk through, the fact that you have thoughts and you can speak and use your intellect, and that you have sentience and intelligence, that exists in this physical world is profound evidence that somebody has ordered this place, and that creation is true. And the Bible demonstrates that's true too. It says that because of the creation, we have no excuse. And so I would say it's irrational to live in this world and breathe and have thoughts and emotions and relationships and see the astonishing complexity and interdependence of this world and believe that it happened on its own. So I think everything should convince you.
And did you want to respond to that at all, Mark? Yeah, sure. That's we're really stacking up claims here today. So the problem is that same explanation with everything should convince you could be applied to literally anything. I mean, it could be applied to Charlie, my magic unicorn out the back. What should convince you he exists? Well, he's magic. Everything. He did everything at all. So doing a reductio ad absurdum, that sort of suggestion becomes absurd because it could be used for literally anything.
No.
All right, guys. Well, like I said earlier, thanks for keeping this Q&A lots of fun. We're going to end it with this question. So, and once again, I apologize to anybody whose question we may not have gotten to, but we are going on 2.5 hours at this point. And I will say 2.5 hours have flown by. This has been a great debate. So thank you to Mark and Neff for making it so much fun. So this last question is... let's see. Oh, I think I might have lost it. Question from, let's see. Bear with me. Question from Redefine Living. Question for Mark. So once again, Mark, I thank you for being a good sport. Most of them were.
Yeah, no problem.
How does something made out of matter create something that is not made of matter?
How does something made out of matter create something not made? I think create's the wrong word here. So matter and energy are kind of interchangeable. So if you're asking how matter gets transformed into energy, we see it all the time. So say a change of state from the matter of wood, you burn it, it becomes heat, which is energy. Other matter is lost. The laws of thermodynamics basically say that some of that energy will be lost. But it also says that matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. They just change into other things. So I think I'm not sure exactly whether that's addressing what they were asking. I hope so.
Well, I appreciate that. And Neff, if you had a response, go ahead.
Well, the question, I think Mark missed completely the mark on this question. The question is obviously surrounding human minds. which create things constantly that don't physically exist. In fact, information. For example, I can create a package of information in my mind, and I can convey that to someone else. That information may not have ever existed before in the world, but I can create the information and convey it to someone else. So if the question is, how can the physical chemistry of our brain, if that's all we are, and we don't have a spirit, and we're just our quote unquote mind, is just the chemical interactions of our gray matter, how is it that that gray matter, which is comprised of matter, its chemistry, able to produce things that don't exist physically, like algorithms and information? That's the question. They have no mass. They don't physically exist. You can't put information in a mayonnaise jar and say, look at it. You have to write it down or print it out so that it can be read. But the information itself isn't made of matter. It doesn't physically exist. Neither does an algorithm. It's a concept, a mental, non-physical thing, just like my imaginary favorite house, my dream house I invent in my mind. It doesn't physically exist at all, and yet I can tell you all about it. See, how is it? It's irrational to believe that chemistry, physical material, can create that which doesn't physically exist. And this demonstrates that whatever's creating the non-physical sentient components, the things that we create that are non-physical, is itself a non-physical cause, because it can't be a physical one. We need a non-physical cause to create non-physical things. Just like material actions create physical results, a non-physical thing requires a non-physical cause.
All right, thank you, Neff. And this
Can I just
question
respond to
was for
that?
you. Well, yeah, of course. It's your question.
Yeah,
so you get
yeah.
the last word.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I apologize if I misunderstood the question. So you're basically asking, how can the mind create abstractions? So we know that the mind is made up of matter, but it also uses neurons and storage systems and all of this other stuff that can create abstractions. It has not been demonstrated that a god or a spirit or a ghost or anything at all is necessary for the mind to produce consciousness and then create abstractions in that consciousness and store them as memory. So the problem here is because we don't understand how the mind creates consciousness, and we know the mind does create consciousness because when we damage the mind, consciousness ceases to happen. You can't just insert God. Again, it's an argument from ignorance.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it on that question. We just we almost hit the 2.5 hour mark. So everybody in the chat, thanks so much for the support, the kind words. I really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to the debaters, Mark and Neff. Thank you for giving us your time. If you were not generous enough with your time like you were, we wouldn't have this awesome debate tonight. So guys, I want to give you the opportunity to have the final words before we call it a night. So once again, thanks for doing this. Mark, it was your first time on the channel and it was essentially your first formal debate. So why don't we hand it over to you for some final words?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Standing for Truth, for letting me be on here. Thanks to NephilimFree for being my very erudite opponent. And yeah, very, very fun. I really enjoyed myself. So I want to thank you both. And thanks for chat for making it real and fantastic and interesting. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and hopefully I will return when I've got some time to do so.
Awesome. You are always welcome on the channel, Mark, of course. So thanks again. I hope you had, like you said, you had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun too. This was definitely a great debate. Seriously, I mean that. This was an awesome debate. Neff, some final words. Thanks again for being here, Neff.
Oh, thanks for hosting it, as always. And thanks to Mark for being willing to jump into the den of lambs and debate with me. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed this debate, and I hope we get to chat again.
Yeah, it'd be great.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again. There's an after show over on Neff's channel, so everybody's welcome. And thanks again for sticking with us, guys. This was a lot of fun. God bless. SFT is out.